Chapter 671. When Bai Yue shouted out the three words, "It's Sun Lang," in despair, the sword spirit finally understood all the cause and effect. Even the insidious and shrewd B*TCH personality would never have thought that there would be such a coincidence in the world. Or, she didn't even think in this direction. At this time, the sword spirit also fell into great confusion. The demon's sword floated in the air, and she muttered to herself, "I should have thought of it, but why was it like this at this time?" She also discovered Xie Wei's strange movements. She saw Xie Wei stagger to a certain place and saw a letter lying there. Although she didn't know who put down these two letters, but since the other party was able to predict Xie Wei's actions and lure her to pursue the truth, then the letter placed here would definitely not have any good words written on it. The sword spirit's heart moved, and she shouted, "Wait a minute!" Xie Wei stopped, slowly turned her head, and stared straight at Ji Du. She even gave up on spiritual communication, and her tone didn't fluctuate. "What's the matter?" The little fairy was on the verge of collapse. Even the sword spirit, who was with her day and night, couldn't fully understand the despair and sadness in Xie Wei's heart at this time. She grew up in a valley isolated from the rest of the world, and so far, she didn't have any worries for the past 18 years. She was an innocent girl who stepped into the world because of her brother's hatred. Because she accidentally obtained a demon's sword, she fell into the greed and evil thoughts of humans. The outside world was far more dangerous than she imagined. In the pursuit and encirclement of humans, she met Sun Lang, the enemy who killed her brother, and also met the crazy Bai Yue. She hesitated on how to deal with the hatred of her brother, because Sun Lang's strength was incomparably powerful, and revenge was obviously an extravagant hope. Just when she decided to wait and see, she gradually understood the grievances between Sun Lang and Bai Yue, as well as the shocking secret hidden in the hearts of these two heroes of Tianyuan. The emotions in her heart gradually became complicated. She was brought to the Bai Castle by Sun Lang in a daze. 2 years ago, the battle at the Great Desolate Mountain was still brewing. She saw Bai Yue's pained and confused soul, and she also saw the sadness hidden under Sun Lang's optimistic appearance. She also saw something that she cared deeply about in this abandoned house. All of this made her feel at a loss. But what made her feel most at a loss was her impression of Sun Lang. She had never met her brother. The so-called revenge was only the duty of a blood relative. On the other hand, her feelings towards Sun Lang were getting more and more complicated. On one hand, she reminded herself that Sun Lang was the enemy who killed her brother. On the other hand, she could not help but be curious about the past of the hero of the Heaven's Origin sector. This curiosity even evolved into trust and even dependence. When she quarreled with Sister Lu, when she was troubled by the illusion in the abandoned house, and when she was entangled in the past of her parents, the first thing she thought of was to confide in Sun Lang. She even became worried about her gains and losses, thinking about what kind of attitude Sun Lang would have towards her after she revealed the truth in the future. She even faintly hoped that Sun Lang would give her a legitimate reason to kill her brother, although this terrible idea only appeared for a moment. However, Xie Wei couldn't deceive her own heart. She discovered something that she didn't know whether she should be sad or happy about. She didn't seem to want to take revenge. Instead of fighting with Sun Lang, she would rather the other party give her a proper reason. It was not because she was afraid of Sun Lang's power, but because of something else, something that she had not yet realized and had not yet sprouted. But now, all of this was meaningless, because the hatred was spreading not only her brother, her father, her mother, her uncles, her clansmen. Perhaps now, she was the only horned tiger left in the world, and the murderer who caused the extinction of her clan and the deaths of her clansmen was him. Bai Yue's screams were still ringing in her ears, constantly echoing, magnifying, and distorting. It was Sun Lang. It was Sun Lang who killed her. It was Sun Lang who killed her in the Great Desolate Mountain. Her parents and relatives all participated in that battle. So she became an orphan. So she was alone. So she had no relatives since she was young. So she was alone and could not see her parents since she was young. All the truth was revealed. All the mysteries were solved. That ignorant mood, that inexplicable emotion, everything became the best fuel, and a blazing flame swept through everything. She felt a flame burning in her body. She slowly turned her head and picked up the letter on the ground. All of the sword spirit's tough attitude and sharp words were useless. She, who was extremely shrewd and sharp-tongued, said clumsily like never before, "Wait a minute. There's an inside story behind the Battle of the Great Desolate Mountain. Your parents." Xia Wei clenched the letter in her hand and suddenly turned her head, her eyes sad and desperate. "But they are my parents. I don't care what they did. I only know that I will never see them again." What Sun Lang said was right. Rationality would never be able to suppress emotion. Never. The B*TCH was speechless by this sentence, and Xia Wei had already torn open the letter in her hand without hesitation. The letter was still concise and comprehensive. In the previous letter, there was a long list of names, listed their resumes and affiliations, listed the places where they died in battle, and listed their chief generals. There was nothing else besides this. The person who wrote the letter was a cunning hunter. That person would not throw out the fierce truth directly, because that would lead to suspicion and denial. The conspirator only threw out bait, gave hints, and guided Xia Wei to pursue the truth step by step, discover the truth by herself, and feel the truth by herself. This letter was the same. There was no explanation, no guidance, because Xia Wei did not need these things at this time. The first sentence: "Do you want revenge? Do you want to take revenge for your parents? Do you want the murderer to pay the price? Do you want to complete the unfinished business of your parents?" Xia Wei's eyes were sunran, and she did not hesitate to continue reading. After a moment, she remembered all the contents. She crushed the letter in her hand into ashes, and without looking at Bai Yue, who was curled up on the ground, she strode outside. Ji Du said angrily, "What do you want to do? What did the letter say? Did the person who wrote the letter want you to deal with Sun Lang? Are you crazy? Hurry up and—" The sword spirit said a few words, and seeing that the little demon was not moved, she had the idea of using force. But she had signed a contract with Xia Wei, and the two shared demonic powers, and their souls were connected. Her thoughts could not escape Xia Wei's senses. The little demon suddenly turned her head. The dagger in her hand was already at her heart. She looked at the demon's sword expressionlessly, and her voice was gloomy and hoarse. "Sister Lu, don't force me." The bitch personality roared. "Sun Lang will kill you. Then let him kill me." Xia Wei shouted hysterically. "Just like how he killed my parents. If he wants to kill me, then let him." The sword spirit was furious. "What nonsense are you talking about? Do you want to die?" Xia Wei said numbly. "Even so, Sister Lu, you don't have to follow me. I must find him. It doesn't matter if I die in his hands, but if you stop me, I will die here immediately. You know I don't lie." After she finished speaking, she turned and left, exposing her back to the demon's sword, and did not look back even once. Ji Du was suspended in the air for a long time, and his sword was trembling. Suddenly, he scolded, "I'm so angry." Then, a purple light flashed, and he chased after Xia Wei. At this moment, in the magnificent guest hall of the Bai family, Bai Jinming looked at Sun Lang and made a deliberate and hateful accusation. "It's him." The first reaction of the people present was whether they had an auditory hallucination, and the second reaction was whether Bai Jinming was joking. "What the hell? Hey, he's the one who brought us here, and now he is sitting here steadily, and you say he is the one who planned everything, the one who plotted against the Bai family?" Even if the people present were martial arts heroes and cultivators who had been famous for decades, and had seen a lot of storms in their lives, they were still stunned by this unexpected turn of events. For a moment, there was silence. After a short moment, a light laugh sounded out. Sun Lang broke the deathly silence. He looked at Bai Junming and said indifferently, "You cried and wailed for so long, just to say this?" Everyone came back to their senses, and in surprise, they asked questions and doubts. Shimin Qing's voice was the loudest. "Bai Junming, do you think we are 3 years old? No wonder you are so humble, It turns out that you want to provoke us to fight among ourselves. On the other hand, Yang Tian-du did not say a word. The expression of this famous hero, a famous person in Jianghu, slowly turned from shock to pale. There was a fatal flaw in the plan. He faintly sensed that something had happened. The people of Tensei province had made their move. Facing the flood of questions from all directions, Bai Junming stared at Sun Lang, and his voice did not tremble at all. Of course, I am not lying. If I suddenly die, or immediately die in the hands of this person, you should know the truth. Sun Lang smiled. Don't worry, I will not suddenly burst your dog head with a punch. I will let you know why you died, and let you cry enough before you die. Bai Junming's eyes were as sharp as knives, and he gritted his teeth. I have long been prepared to die. Otherwise, why would I fall out with you and not pretend to be polite with you? The men of the Bai family are indomitable, and they will never compromise. Even if I die, I will let your crimes be known to the world. You humiliated my father, threatened my family, and I cannot live under the same sky. How can I let you have it easy? The conversation between the two was shrouded in fog, and no one could understand the true meaning of Bai Junming's accusation. However, the martial artists in the room were all old and experienced. Even though Sun Lang had a smile on his face and did not show the slightest bit of anger or killing intent from being exposed, they noticed Yang Tian-du's expression beside him. As the senior's lackey and agent, Yang Tian-du had automatically been classified as Sun Lang's faction in their minds, and at this time, the fear on Yang Tian-du's face could not be concealed. Everyone secretly exchanged glances, quietly moved their bodies, and put on a defensive posture. Sun Lang, on the other hand, seemed to be oblivious to all of this. He was still smiling, as if he didn't care about what had happened. He looked at Bai Junming with interest and raised his chin. Come, start your performance. Let me see your flawless plan and plan. Let me see, after 2 years, how much has that woman improved? Chapter 672. This matter was a bit tricky. The Jianghu people present were somewhat confused. They were all veterans and had seen many things, but they had never seen the situation in front of them. For example, one day, the righteous Jianghu suddenly organized a vigorous crusade against the devil cult. Everyone wanted to elect a Wulin Alliance leader to lead everyone to destroy the devil cult and return the righteous Jianghu to the righteous Jianghu. Therefore, heroes from all sides went up and competed with each other. The strongest one was the Wulin Alliance leader, who was the overall leader of the United Nations Army. After a series of battles on the arena, the final victor was unexpectedly a young man with excellent martial arts skills who was unknown to the world. Although he was very young, he had the bearing of a hero and a leader. Everyone was infected by his strong personality and charisma and decided to recommend him as the Wulin Alliance leader. Of course, the main reason was that they hoped that this relatively good fighter would be able to fight against the invincible father of the devil cult leader. After all, the invincible father of the devil cult leader was too strong, and no one was sure that they could escape unscathed. Therefore, everyone vigorously fought their way to the Bright Peak and the Blackwood Cliff. In short, they went to the headquarters of the devil cult. Then, the devil cult leader personally came out to welcome them. His attitude was very humble. He invited all the Jianghu heroes to the living room and then bowed his head. Then, he cried miserably. No one expected the dignified devil cult leader to be such a sissy. Seeing him cry so aggrievedly, they let him talk about the grievances in his heart. So the hierarch said, Aya, our sacred sect has been wronged. We were used by someone in that big case. This crusade against the demonic sect was also instigated by that person. His purpose was to stir up a storm in the martial arts world so that he could benefit from it. And you're all chess pieces in his hands. Everyone asked, who is that person? Then, the devil cult leader pointed at the Wulin Alliance leader. It was him. Wow! After hearing this news, the Jianghu heroes present did not have a trace of joy of there was a traitor among us. They felt very annoyed. Originally, when they heard this, they would definitely ask the overall leader to give an explanation. If the evidence was conclusive, they would join hands to correct this mistake. However, Sun Lang was really too strong. After all, he was someone who could fight with the invincible father of the devil cult. If he suddenly attacked, the consequences would be unpredictable. Moreover, this matter was difficult to distinguish between truth and falsehood, so they were unable to make a judgment. Therefore, this was King awkward. Even though they were knowledgeable and quick-witted, they didn't know how to deal with the problem at hand. Everyone had different expressions. Shimin Ching said, "What kind of evidence is this? They're all your family members. They will say whatever you want them to say. What's so hard about making up a story and colluding with each other?" Sun Lang just smiled. "Then here comes the question. Since I'm an honored guest of your Bai family, why did I leave 2 days ago? And why did I bring everyone up the mountain in the end and completely destroy you?" Bai Jinming's eyes were like knives that stabbed into Sun Lang. His eyes were burning with anger as he said, "What? Do you think I don't dare to say it? Since I am going to expose your true colors today, I have nothing to fear." He turned to look at the martial artists present and said in a loud voice, "To tell you the truth, everyone, this man drove my father crazy. He took advantage of my father's insanity and instigated him to go to Huaichuan and kill innocent martial artists. Then he turned around and planned this big event in the martial arts world to achieve his unspeakable goal. He came up the mountain to find me because he wanted to use this incident to force me to submit to him. He wanted to force me to be his lackey and dog." He didn't even look at Sun Lang. It was as if he didn't care about his life and death. He was brimming with extraordinary courage and didn't care if Sun Lang would suddenly explode and take his life. He really didn't care about anything else. He wanted to reveal this secret even at the cost of his own life. Bai Jinming's voice was agitated. "My father is a renowned elder of 3 dynasties, and he's the renowned Gold Radiant Sword Saint. If news of him killing the innocent were to spread, his reputation would be tarnished. If he were to fall, our Bai clan would lose its pillar of support, and we would be exposed to the wolves and wolves. Even our clan might not be able to protect itself. If this really happened, I would be the center of the Bai family if I couldn't protect my father's reputation and the survival of my family." His face was filled with pain, and he said sadly, "I couldn't refuse his threat. His martial arts are so powerful. How could I resist when he threatened me with the lives of my father and the rest of my family? So I was forced to agree and cooperate with him to put on a show. He promised to let my family and my father go, as long as the Bai family submitted to him." Sun Lang crossed his legs and said with a smile, "But now you've abandoned the dark and joined the light. Have you been inspired by some hero?" Bai Jinming glared fiercely at Sun Lang. "No, the biggest reason is because of you. You despicable and cruel bastard. You never thought of letting my father go, never thought of letting my Bai family go. Since that's the case, why should I rely on you? Why should I be used by you? Even if it's for my father, I will fight with you. Is that so?" Sun Lang said calmly, "I thought you were being persuaded by some suspicious organization. Your family always likes to go down a dead end. Your father is like this, and so is your son." The conversation between the two became more and more profound. It took a while for everyone to understand. Shimin Qing frowned and said, "Bai Zhenming, you still haven't explained it clearly. According to what you said, the senior planned all of this and asked the Bai family to cooperate with him. What does he want? What does he want? What kind of grudge does he have with your father? What does he want?" Bai Zhenming sneered as he stared at Sun Lang. His eyes were cold as he said, "Of course he wants to push all the blame onto an organization. Whether it's instigating my father to kill, or the fact that all of you came to the Bai clan fort together, he wants to push all the blame onto an organization." Shimin Qing was stunned. "What organization?" Bai Jinming took a deep breath and said, "Of course, Tensei Province." As soon as he said this, a few people could not help but stand up and exclaim in shock. They subconsciously looked at Yang Tianming, who had been huddled in a corner without saying a word. Their eyes were filled with shock and anger. "Hey, didn't you submit to Tensei Province?" Isn't this senior from Tensei Province? How did he end up putting the blame on Tensei Province? Shimen Qing seemed to be shocked as well. He said in disbelief, "How is this possible? Why does Senior want to go against Tensei Province? What kind of grudge does he have with Tensei Province?" Bai Zhiming laughed loudly. There was a hint of madness in his eyes, and his tone became twisted. "Grudge? Of course. You don't know, right? His name is Sun Lang, but 2 years ago, he used to have another name. The reason why he hates my father in Tensei Province is because of the Dahuang Mountain." At this moment, Sun Lang said calmly, "Bai Zhiming." His tone was calm, but a shocking murderous aura instantly swept through the hall. The martial artist could feel the bone-chilling coldness and could not help but get into defensive positions. Bai Zhiming was the first to bear the brunt. He could feel the terrifying murderous aura, but his heart was burning fiercely. This is it. His heart was trembling. "Get angry and kill me. I've already made up my mind. What about you? If you kill me, you'll be committing the crime. Then Monk Jing and the others will think that you're trying to silence me. Do you want to explain yourself to them? Explain what happened at the Dahuang Mountain? No, you won't. If you don't, they'll take action. If they take action, you'll kill them all. Also, kill the Bai family members outside if you want to. It doesn't matter if you kill all the martial artists at the foot of the mountain. All the elites and future hope of the Bai family have secretly left. You won't be able to kill my father. If you destroy the Bai family, you'll destroy this rotten family. A new seed has already sprouted. You'll become a notorious murderer. In order to spread your madness, the new Bai family will also receive preferential treatment from the imperial court. So kill me, kill me. You're good at martial arts, but you can't stop people from talking. You're good at martial arts, but you can't stop people from talking. Tensei Province is ready. Are you ready? Come and kill me. I'll use my life to give you a heavy blow. My death will be worth it. You insulted my father and threatened my family. How can I let you go?" He wanted to add fuel to the fire and reveal more secrets so that Sun Lang could make a move immediately. Suddenly, he heard a series of hurried footsteps. A beautiful figure rushed into the room. It was Xia Wei. However, the innocent smile on her face was no longer there, and her eyes were no longer as gentle and lively as they used to be. As soon as she entered, she glared at Sun Lang. Her eyes were filled with hatred and anger. "Here it comes." Suddenly, Bai Zhiming recalled the instructions in the last letter. He laughed in his heart and shouted, "This is the sword master of the Huai Chuan Divine Sword." She was also one of the witnesses to the Huai Chuan massacre. She saw everything with her own eyes and came to the Bai family fort with Sun Lang and my father. She can testify that everything that happened that day was Sun Lang's scheme. After that, he shouted at Xia Wei, "Tell me the truth, little girl." Xia Wei turned a deaf ear to him. She just looked at Sun Lang, her body trembling uncontrollably. Sun Lang also looked at her. There was no surprise or anger on his face. He was still smiling. His smile was calm and gentle. He smiled and asked, "Why? Are you involved too?" Chapter 673. Xia Wei had heard Bai Zhiming's accusation when she was outside. At this moment, she was calmer than ever. Her mind was clear, and she understood everything. She already understood Sun Lang's current situation. Bai Zhiming's counterattack had caused great waves in their plan. A big net of conspiracy had slowly fallen. He had turned from the hunter to the prey. The Bai clan fort had become a trap, and the allies he had brought with him had become the enemy. The situation was extremely unfavorable, and what she was about to do would undoubtedly make a situation worse. Therefore, she had been staring at Sun Lang's face since she came in. With his intelligence, it was impossible for him to not think of the consequences of such a thing. She longed to see something from Sun Lang's face, whether it was shock, anger, fear, or panic. As an avenger, she wanted to see such a thing. She wanted to see the inexplicable horror on her enemy's face. If that was not the case, revenge would be meaningless. Revenge was to let the murderer experience the pain that he had inflicted on others. It was to make the murderer regret and regret. If that was not the case, revenge would not be complete. But there was nothing. Xia Wei did not see anything that she wanted to see. Sun Lang was still smiling as usual. It was a smile that came from the bottom of his heart. It was not forced at all, nor was it pretending to be calm. He smiled and said, "What's wrong? Are you involved too?" It was like a normal greeting. There was no shock, no anger, and no feeling of being caught off guard. It was as if everything was within his expectations and nothing was worth his attention. The little fairy felt that she had punched empty air. She should have revealed an angry expression and stared fiercely at Sun Lang. She should have loudly declared her identity and asked him to avenge the blood of her parents. All her previous actions, whether it was forcing by Yue or Ji Du's decisiveness, were swift and decisive. She should have denounced her enemy in one go. But for some reason, looking at Sun Lang's calm smile, her heart skipped a beat. She suddenly remembered what Sister Lu had said to her before. He was mentally prepared that you would stab him in the back at any time and any place. If this happened, he would not panic or be surprised. He would only calmly deal with it and treat it as a normal thing. Even if in his eyes, he was just a harmless little girl from the demon clan whom he had met by chance, he was still prepared to be betrayed. Or rather, he was prepared to be betrayed by everyone. A prophecy. Sure enough, the moment Xiaowei saw Sun Lang's calm expression, her heart suddenly surged with extremely complex emotions. She did not know whether she should laugh or cry. She did not even know what she should say next. She recalled the conversation they had back then. Sister Lu told her that Sun Lang was indiscriminate against everyone. At that time, she was also extremely shocked, and even she could not believe. Everyone is the same. There shouldn't be any exceptions. He will treat everyone equally and guard against everyone in this world. Why is this happening? Yeah, why is it like this? Sister Lu did not give an answer. She just asked a question. But now, Xiaowei seemed to understand. She remembered the bloody words in the abandoned house and by Yue's despair. She thought of Sun Lang's past and the terrible hatred he showed when he confronted by Yue. Why was Sun Lang so indiscriminately guarded against everyone? Why was he so indomitable, so open and upright before that even Sister Lu admired him? But now he was indiscriminately guarded against everyone in the world and took all the betrayals for granted. She finally understood now. Only those who had experienced the most unforgettable betrayal would not believe it. That unsurprised face, even with a faint smile, hid a strong and sad sadness. There was no one he could trust, not even a harmless little fairy he had met by chance. This was such a sad thing. Xiaowei stared at Sun Lang, her eyes changing intensely. No one knew what she was thinking. The martial artists in the hall also looked at the little girl who suddenly appeared in surprise. Some people were looking around, trying to find her sword. Bai Jinming saw that Xiaowei was silent and said anxiously, "Miss, what are you waiting for? Don't be afraid. Don't forget the hatred of your parents. It's time to make him pay the price. The uncles here will protect you." Sun Lang frowned. Parents? The hatred of her parents. These words were embedded in Xiaowei's mind, freeing her from her chaotic thoughts. After all, she was the daughter of her parents. After all, she carried the hatred of the entire clan on her back. This deep blood hatred was enough to suppress all pity, affection, and regret. It made her make the most correct choice. Xiaowei's eyes were like knives as she looked coldly at the enemy in front of her. Sun Lang was still smiling, waiting for Xiaowei to speak. Bai Jinming shouted, "Reveal his true face. Let his evil plan be known to the world." Xiaowei said coldly, "It's not him." Bai Jinming shouted, "Did you all hear that? He's the one who controlled my crazy father and instigated him to." He only reacted halfway and glared at Xiaowei, his eyes almost spitting fire. "What did you say?" You. Xiaowei looked around and said coldly, "I personally witnessed the incident in Huaichuan. I saw Master by killing people and also saw him come out to stop him. I came to Bai Castle with him and saw a lot of things. I don't know about other schemes, but at least I didn't see any signs of Sun Lang controlling Master Bai." Bai Jinming was furious. How could things go wrong here? What was wrong with Tensei Province? He said angrily, "Were you forced by him? Have you forgotten the deep hatred between your parents?" Xiaowei didn't look at him. She only had Sun Lang in her eyes. In the end, Horned Tiger gritted his teeth and said, "It's because of the deep hatred between my parents that I can't pollute them with hypocritical lies and shameless schemes. They were the glorious heroes of Tianyuan. They lived their lives with a clear conscience. How can I use such despicable tricks to disgrace their graves?" Bai Zhiming was furious. "Nonsense! Nonsense!" Sun Lang looked at Xie Wei and said calmly, "So your enemy is me? You have a strong, murderous aura. Who are your parents?" Little Demon took a deep breath. Her eyes were cold and her face was cold. She would never treat this person with a beautiful smile and a gentle tone again. She looked straight into Sun Lang's eyes and said, "My name is Xie Wei." "Xie Wei?" Sun Lang muttered to himself. This name was very familiar. It plucked a string in his heart. Old memories floated in his mind, and he immediately understood. "So you are the Xie Wei that Taoist Bai Shui mentioned." At that time, he said that you were almost an adult, so you could see the scene of your loved ones dying through the resonance of your blood. Sun Lang said calmly, "You are Xie Ji's sister." Xie Wei said coldly, "Yes, I am also Xie Hui's daughter." Sun Lang was in a trance for a moment. He never thought that there would be such a coincidence. After a moment of silence, he said lightly, "It's really regrettable." "Only these few words?" Xie Wei clenched her fists and tried to keep her voice from trembling. "You killed my elder brother." Sun Lang readily admitted, "Yes, you shouldn't believe me now, but you can believe another person. Taoist Bai Shui of Zhenyang Palace was the one who experienced this matter. He saw your elder brother before me and also saw him die. You should be an elder you are familiar with. You can ask him about the cause and effect of this matter." "What is this? Self-defense?" Xie Wei squeezed out a few words from between her teeth. "And my parents' clan." Sun Lang's tone was still calm. "Yes, they died in the Great Desolate Mountain. I killed them." The little fairy finally couldn't help it. Tears fell from her eyes. She used all her strength to cry and scold. "Is that it? Is this your answer? Aren't you very good at talking? You won't even quibble?" Sun Lang said with his hands behind his back, "Killing is killing. I have nothing to say." Xie Wei's eyes were red. She hissed, "They are the heroes of Tianyuan," Sun Lang said indifferently. "I used to be one too." He looked at Xie Wei and said slowly, "I told you before. Revenge is revenge. There is no justice to speak of. It is right and proper for you to avenge your parents. It doesn't matter if they are the heroes of Tianyuan or not." The little fairy stared at Sun Lang. There were still tears on her face, but she slowly nodded. Her tone became calm again. "Good, good. Since you don't deny it, then I can take revenge." Sun Lang shook his head. "With your current martial arts, even if you add Ji-Do, you won't be able to break my skin even if you use 1,000 moves. Xie Wei, you didn't take the opportunity to frame me today. No matter what the reason is, I won't kill you today, so you can live. If you want revenge, you should quickly go back to the mountain and cultivate." After saying this, he didn't care about Xie Wei's reaction and looked directly at Bai Zhiming. "What other moves do you have? Hurry up." Although Xie Wei denied Sun Lang's suspicion, the conversation between the two was still quite dangerous. It made the martial artist present feel very uneasy and hesitant. Bai Zhiming saw this and gritted his teeth. Even if this little fairy was threatened by him, I still have the most important evidence in my hands. Everyone, just 2 days ago, Sun Lang sneaked into Jinyuan town and obtained your trust. He still maintained contact with the Bai family. He once personally wrote a letter to me, giving me instructions. At the same time, he pulled open his lapel and pulled out a letter from the breastplate on his chest. He raised it in the air and shouted, "It's right here. You don't have to suspect that my Bai clan forged this letter. This letter is written by him and contains a superior sword intent. Even if my Bai clan wanted to forge it, we wouldn't be able to. You're all heroes of the martial arts world. You will know whether it is true or not with just a glance." Sun Lang shook his head and smiled. He looked at Master Jing and said, "Baldy," he said, "there is a letter. Take a look." Master Jing didn't understand and took the letter cautiously. Then, he carefully guarded against Sun Lang and slowly opened the letter. After reading a few lines, his expression became very strange. After quickly reading it, he looked at the proud and fierce Bai Zhiming and said hesitantly, "Mr. Bai, the content of this letter." Bai Junming felt that victory was in his grasp. Hearing this, he was shocked and took the letter back in surprise. After reading it a few times, his expression changed greatly. He had personally hidden the letter in the breastplate the night before last so that he could take it out today to catch Sun Lang off guard. The content of the letter was clearly Sun Lang's plan and instructions to the Bai family. He had read it many times and couldn't be wrong. But what was this? There was no mistake in the letter, but the content. How could the content be an order from Tensei Province? Tensei Province didn't write this letter at all. He was drenched in cold sweat as he quickly read through the contents of the letter. What was written in the letter was actually the instructions and orders that the Heavenly Policy Mansion had given to him about framing Sun Lang. How could this be? Bai Junming screamed and stared at Sun Lang. He said loudly, "This letter is fake. You must have done something to it. What did you change the letter? You must have secretly changed the letter, right?" Sun Lang sighed. "I didn't change it. It's too troublesome. Mr. Bai, you are a high and mighty master. You must not know the composition of the ink. Look, I picked the ink and ground it with water. The words were also written by me. You also said that it contained a superior sword will. So, have you forgotten who I am?" Bai Junming's pupils suddenly shrank. Then, as if he had grasped at a life-saving straw, he shouted, "You heard it!" He admitted that he did something to the letter. Beside him, Shi Minqing was also shocked. "Senior, could it really be?" Sun Lang glanced at this Earth Extinction Blade Master. He shook his head and sighed. "Hero Shimen, right? Your performance today was too eye-catching. You were too lively and said too many things. You don't understand. You must be covert and separate yourself from the crowd to avoid being targeted. Therefore, you must be low-key. You must watch carefully before you lead. You must calm your heart. I know you are happy that you are riding on the coattails of Tensei Province, but you can't be too active. Otherwise, you will be exposed." Shi Minqing heard this and was shocked. He subconsciously took 2 steps back. "You," Sun Lang just looked at him and said in a persuasive tone, "This is my life experience. You must remember this. This impetuous habit, you must change in your next life." Then a white shadow flashed. Even with the eyesight of the heroes in the hall, they couldn't see Sun Lang's movements clearly. They only felt a blur in front of their eyes. Sun Lang had already rushed forward 10 steps and arrived in front of Shi Minqing. His hand rose and his palm fell, right on the forehead. Even with the Earth Extinction Blade Master's martial arts and Qigong, he didn't struggle or resist at all. His eyes bulged and blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. He fell to the ground without a sound. His entire head was spread out on the ground like a biscuit. Everyone was shocked and pulled out their weapons. Sun Lang was surrounded by murderous intent, but he still looked calm and collected. He shook his wrist and looked at Bai Junming. "Bai Junming, you are very stupid. You don't understand the principles of Tensei Province, so you are finished. This matter, the truth has never been important. Even if I admit it, so what? You don't even understand this kind of thing. You deserve to die and be exterminated. However, it doesn't matter. No matter what, I have been your grandfather for a few days. If you don't understand this principle," Sun Lang said lightly, "I will let you broaden your knowledge before you die." Chapter 674. From a moment Sun Lang spoke to the moment he killed, only a few breaths of time had passed. In an instant, the Earth Extinction Blade sex Shi Minqing, who had once used the Phoenix Severing Blade to intimidate the 2 thorns and enjoyed a great reputation for 20 years, died on the spot without a sound. Everyone's first reaction was shock, and then they felt a deep chill. This was the so-called the fox grieves for the rabbit's death. The famous Earth Extinction Blade sect of the Jianghu died just like that. The group of heroes drew their weapons as quickly as possible and retreated. They looked at Sun Lang as if they were facing a great enemy, but no one dared to say anything. They felt that they had already overestimated Sun Lang's martial arts, but now it seemed that they had still underestimated him. Master Jing was worthy of being the representative of the Sanskrit temple, the so-called #1 sect of the Jianghu. At this juncture, he still shouldered the responsibility of being the leader of the Jianghu. He held a Buddhist monk's blade in each hand and shouted, "Benefactor, if you have something to say, we can talk it over. There is no need to use such a vicious move." Sun Lang ignored him and turned his head towards the vigilant Taoist priest Bai. "I have some friendship with Taoist priest Bai Shui, so I'll let you go. If you don't want to suffer, then stand by yourself against the wall." The meaning behind his words was that he was already prepared for a great battle. Although everyone here was a member of the Jianghu and had earned their fame by fighting with their blades and spears before Sun Lang, they actually did not have the courage to make the first move. Their first reaction was actually to try and resolve the matter peacefully. One of them shouted, "Senior, we are not the claws and fangs of Tensei Province. We have never offended you. There's nothing you can do about it. If you want to blame someone, then blame the Bai family in Tensei Province." Sun Lang then looked at Yang Tiandu, who was already scared half to death. "You didn't do anything wrong, and your performance was fine. Stand by the wall as well. Lend me your sword." They were all going to use their swords. Suddenly, one of them stepped on the ground without saying a word and quickly shot backwards towards the door. It seemed like he was planning to escape without a trace. Sword light flashed. Sun Lang only lightly pointed his finger, and the long sword in Yang Tiandu's hand immediately left its scabbard. It turned into a stream of sword light and set off the sound of death in the air. His head soared into the sky and blood gushed out. That person was still dozens of steps away from the door when his headless body fell to the ground. Almost as soon as he started to run, the flying sword chased after him. Sun Lang sighed. "Sigh silly. No matter how fast the Hong Kong reporters run, can they outrun a 59 caliber rifle?" Yang Tiando had already reached the wall at his fastest speed. He looked like he wanted to bury his body into the wall. Another person died. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. However, they were still heroes of the martial arts world after all. Their bravery and ruthlessness had not faded. Seeing that there was no hope for peace and there was no way to escape, they would fight to the death first. However, Sun Lang was still faster than them. The longsword that killed the escapee was controlled by an invisible force. After drinking the blood from the neck, it immediately flew back. Sun Lang did not wait for it to fly back to his hand and pounced on the second target, Zhengyang Palace's Taoist Bai Dai. The Taoist priest felt a gust of wind blowing against his face and was greatly shocked. He didn't even think about it. The pine-patterned ancient sword in his hand shook out a cluster of sword lights and stabbed towards Sun Lang. At the same time, he pointed with his left hand, and a dozen talismans turned into blue flames that flowed on the sword body, greatly increasing the power of the sword technique. However, it was useless. He was facing an enemy he could not resist. Even 10 of him would not be enough. Sun Lang flicked his finger, and the blue flames extinguished. The sword vibrated, and Taoist Bai Dai felt a sharp pain between his thumb and forefinger. He could not even hold the sword, and the pine-patterned ancient sword flew out of his hand. Then, he felt a pain in his lower jaw as he was struck by the rising Dragon Lord. Seeing Taoist Bai Dai spinning towards the wall, everyone roared and attacked Sun Lang together. Sun Lang sneered. At the same time, Taoist Bai Dai's pine-patterned ancient sword fell. He reached out and flicked the hilt of the sword. The ancient sword gained great speed and stabbed at Master Zhiying with a whistling sound. Monk Zhiying was a responsible person. While everyone was terrified, he was the first to rush out and support Taoist Bai Dai with his Buddhist commandment blade. Unfortunately, Taoist Bai Dai was defeated too quickly. Just as he was about to step forward, he felt a piercing, murderous intent. Sword chi was dense, and a cold longsword flew across the sky, stabbing at him. Master Zhiying shouted in a low voice, and the 2 Buddhist commandment blades moved up and down, forming a cross. The blade aura was concentrated, and the sharpness was not revealed. It was the consummate skill of Sanskrit temple's Great Mercy blade technique, and it was enough to send a straight longsword flying. But in the next moment, the master's expression changed drastically. He had only used half of the skill. Before the Buddhist commandment blade and the flying sword collided, he found something terrifying. The flying sword seemed to be thrown out, and its path was straight, no different from an ordinary arrow. As long as one could deal with its speed and strength, it would be easy to block it. But he was wrong. He had only used half of his saber technique when he realized that the long sword, which was like a shooting star, seemed to be moving in a straight line. However, the tip of the sword was pointing at the only flaw in his saber technique. If he used this skill, he would be pierced by the sword before he could block the flying sword. The speed, strength, and accuracy were all good. The sword was pointing at the flaw of the great mercy blade technique. It was as if the sword in front of him was not a straight flying sword, but a peerless swordsman with superb swordsmanship. He was attacking him with a set of shocking sword moves that were created to counter the great mercy blade technique. Was this a coincidence? In the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, the sword approached. Master Zhiying didn't have time to think carefully. He suddenly changed his move. With a loud shout, he blocked with his Buddhist commandment blade. The blade and sword collided. His entire body trembled from the impact. Then he staggered backwards. He had only changed his move in a hurry to protect himself, which was why he lost his composure. He only managed to knock away the flying sword. It could be said that he was in an extremely sorry state. Master Zhiying cried out in shame inwardly. Suddenly, he felt his scalp go numb. He subconsciously turned around, only to find that the long sword he had knocked away rushed up the beam. Then, it bounced off the beam and actually came stabbing down at him. The sword momentum came down from above. Master Zhiying didn't even think about it. His body had already reacted instinctively. He turned around and slashed diagonally. It was a move of the Kasayapa blade technique. As a famous blade master of Prajna Temple, he already knew all of the various blade techniques in the temple. However, when he used this move, his expression changed drastically again. It was because he encountered the same thing again. This flying sword that bounced out from the beam once again pierced towards the greatest weakness of his move. Both times, he encountered this type of terrifying phenomenon that exceeded common sense. His entire body broke out in cold sweat. He once again rolled backwards in a sorry state, avoiding this sword. The flying sword landed on the ground and immediately bounced back. Master Zhiying's eyes stared fixedly at this sword, fearing that it would come back and attack him again. However, it didn't. That pine-patterned ancient sword he seized from Daoist priest bounced on the ground, and then it flew into the distance. There, a white figure was shuttling through the crowd like a butterfly. It was precisely Sun Lang. That pine-patterned ancient sword flew towards Sun Lang. Master Zhiying's eyes followed the sword's body. Sun Lang, who was currently fighting in the crowd, also just happened to turn around. Their gazes collided in the air. Sun Lang's fist broke the double truncheons of a Jianghu hero into two pieces, and then he took the opportunity to strike that person's chest, causing him to vomit blood and fly backwards. At the same time, Sun Lang calmly nodded towards Master Zhiying with an expression of praise, as if he was praising Master Zhiying for being able to dodge these two swords. The pine-patterned ancient sword pierced through the crowd and approached Sun Lang. Then, Master Zhiying saw Sun Lang stretch out his hand and lightly touch the sword's body. Then, he took the opportunity to slap another fist master who was approaching him, sending him flying backwards. It was as if what he did was just along the way. And this pine-patterned ancient sword that was along the way seemed to have regained its power to pierce through metal and stone. It nimbly turned in the air and once again pierced towards Master Zhiying with an unstoppable momentum. Master Zhiying's hair instantly stood on end. He no longer had the bearing of an enlightened monk. He frantically shouted in his heart, "This is not a coincidence. He actually... Impossible. How could he calculate so accurately?" If Master Zhiying's shock was because he was personally witnessing it, then Bai Zhenming's shock was because he was a spectator. When the heroes were fighting, he stood alone in his original position. Sun Lang did not care about him. For a moment, he did not even think about running away. This was because he was planning to die by Sun Lang's hands, using his death to deal a heavy blow to Sun Lang. Thus, he stood on the sidelines and observed the battle. In just a few dozen breaths of time, 7 or 8 people had been defeated or killed. Although this was very fast, it was not unreasonable. After all, This was the strongest sword saint of the past. What made Bai Jinming fearful was something else. 6, 7, 8. This was already the 8th sword. In just a few breaths of time, Sun Lang had defeated several more people and taken their swords. Another 3 swords flew through the air. Because of this, 8 people were firmly trapped. With Master Ji Ying as the leader, they were the strongest 8 people present. The Bai family was a sword saint's family. Although Bai Jinming's aptitude was not the best, he had a father who was the 7 luminary sword saint. He could be considered to have been influenced by him and had extremely high standards. Even with his identity as the son of Sword Saint, he was shocked and even terrified by what was happening in front of him, because everything in front of him was beyond his understanding. The fierce battle in the field was in full swing. Sun Lang calmly faced the crazy group of people and steadily defeated one person after another. In addition, the hall was filled with the light of swords. 8 long swords flew back and forth in the air, suppressing the 8 martial artists to the point that they could not move. These 8 people were famous among famous martial artists. They came from large sects and had excellent martial arts. All of them had learned the most exquisite and powerful martial arts of their respective sections. However, no matter how many strange moves they used, they were still beaten into a sorry state by the flying swords that no one was holding. The flying swords flew back and forth in a straight line as if someone was waving them. Moreover, every move was tit for tat. It was as if someone had created a martial art that was specially designed to counter their sect's unique martial arts and then used it against them. However, these were just flying swords. There was no invisible person waving them. The more Bai Jinming watched, the more shocked he became. These 8 long swords flew through the air, but they were not controlled by Lichen legends. This was because after they flew through the room a few times, they would fly back at a perfect angle. Then, Sun Lang would move them again and again, and they would fly out again with the cold light of the swords. Sun Lang, who was unstoppable in the crowd, only had to move the 8 long swords as if they were his arms. It was as if 8 peerless swordsmen were using 8 different sets of sword techniques to attack the 8 famous martial artists. How'd he do it? Bai Jinming was extremely shocked. For the first time, he felt fear. Only then did he vaguely understand what kind of enemy he was facing. Among the 8 martial artists, there was also someone who was in charge of the overall situation and discovered this terrifying situation. That person seemed to be unable to suppress the fear in his heart and broke down. This is not martial arts. This is witchcraft. How did you do it? At this time, Sun Lang had already beaten all the martial artists surrounding him to the ground. The 8 long swords flew back at him at the same time. He held 2 swords with both hands and pointed the sword tip at the hilt of the remaining 6 swords. As a result, the 6 long swords flew in the air as if they had a mind of their own. They flew around Sun Lang and stabbed straight at him. Sun Lang held 2 swords in his hands, and the 6 swords followed him. He was unstoppable as he rushed towards the last 8 people. Hearing this, he laughed loudly. I don't have any other skills, but I am familiar with them. Chapter 675. There were more than 20 top-notch masters in the martial arts world. Although they were not grandmasters, they were all famous heroes in Jianghu. They did not care about their identities or morals and attacked one person together. They lost. How long did it take? Bai Jinming was in a trance. He felt a great fear in his heart. Even though he had already decided to die, he still felt instinctively afraid when he saw this almost mythical martial art that was beyond the scope of human understanding. He had already greatly overestimated Sun Lang's martial arts. With his father, the Golden Radiant Sword Saint, as a model, it should be enough to be 3 times stronger, right? Someone who was 3 times stronger than his father was already the best in the world, right? His father had also said that when one's martial arts reached the level of a grandmaster, it was already the saint realm that mortals looked up to. It was difficult to determine who would win or lose. The conditions to determine who would win or lose were also very vague and subtle. So, how could he win so quickly? What kind of martial arts was that? Bai Jinming was certain that even his father would have to spend a lot of time and effort to win if he did not use his imperial weapon when faced with such a siege. Chances were that he would have to dodge the attack temporarily and use his internal strength, stamina, skills, and experience that were far greater than the enemy's to break them apart. It was impossible for him to win in a head-on battle so quickly. After all, a grandmaster was also a human. If he was surrounded by a large number of masters, he had to judge the situation and deal with it carefully. After all, no matter how fast he was and how strong his martial arts were, a person only had 2 hands and 1 brain. So how'd he do it? Seeing Sun Lang controlling the 8 swords and charging towards the remaining 8 frightened birds in an unstoppable manner, Bai Junming was suddenly jolted awake. He had already realized that there was a huge variable in the plan. Even though Heavenly Plan Palace's plan was to play to its strengths and avoid its weaknesses, and it was incredibly ingenious, the terrifying martial arts Sun Lang displayed was already enough to forcefully interrupt the operation of the plan. Thinking of this, Bai Jinming gritted his teeth and suddenly rushed to the nearest window. Then he shouted, "Everyone run!" The plan now was to send a signal to the outside world. Tell them that the situation has changed and that they need to start the plan immediately. Previously, in order to numb Sun Lang, and also to show his sincerity, there was no one around in this large hall. Of course, this could show his sincerity, but now it was extremely difficult to send out messages and signals. Although he had already instructed Brother Qing to initiate the plan if there was still no movement after 15 minutes, how long had it been? Sun Lang's martial arts were too strong. If they delayed any longer, they would be in greater danger. They could not wait any longer. Bai Jinming took 2 steps forward and threw out a flying locust stone from his sleeve. The force of the stone was so great that it immediately shattered the window. Bai Jinming was overjoyed. He didn't have time to think about anything else. He gathered his qi in his dantian and was about to let out a long whistle. If he whistled here, it would be enough for the butler waiting outside to hear him. However, at this moment, a shrill scream came from behind him. In the blink of an eye, boundless coldness surged into his heart because he felt his head sink as if someone was pressing down on his head. A demonic whisper sounded in his ears. "Where do you think you're going?" Bai Jinming opened his mouth wide, but he couldn't utter a single word. His vocal cords seemed to be filled with lead water, and his limbs became weak. Waves of bone-chilling fear swept through his body. Humans had an instinctive fear of death. However, the person behind him said, "Don't be afraid. I've said that I'll let you cry enough before you go. I always keep my word, so lie down for a while." Bai Jinming suddenly felt pain all over his body, as if a mountain was pressing down on his shoulders. With a bang, he fell to the ground. The cold ground collided with his body, causing him to feel excruciating pain in his limbs and bones. He couldn't move at all. He desperately turned his head, but he could only see a very narrow image. He saw a white figure rushing towards a scattered crowd. 8 long swords shot out in the air, and the sword chi roared. The next moment, the screams, begging for mercy, roars, and sword chimes all disappeared. Instead, they were replaced by a slightly lazy conclusion, "Best of the game." Bai Jinming desperately blinked his eyes, moved his body, and struggled hard, but it had little effect. Only the sound clearly entered his ears. Sun Lang threw the sword in his hand to the ground. The 8 flying swords that had been shining with piercingly cold sword light and crisscrossing sword path were also lying on the ground. Without a user, they were just a pile of ordinary iron. The Jianghu heroes who had been flaunting their prowess and awe-inspiring earlier were now lying on the ground in disarray. The entire field was filled with low moans and heavy breathing. Only one person was standing. There was also a monster. When the battle had just started, Xie Wei hadn't reacted. After all, she was a country girl who had never seen the world. She had never participated in a team battle. She was really at a loss when it came to this kind of epic world boss. She hadn't decided whether to follow everyone or make another plan when she saw Taoist by Dai flying over. She already knew that this Taoist priest came from Zhenyang Palace and was the disciple of one of her teachers. Seeing that old man lying at the foot of the wall groaning in pain and the messy situation of the group battle, she had no choice but to stomp her feet to check on Taoist priest Bai's situation. Then she discovered that there was a fierce sword aura that was constantly wreaking havoc in Taoist priest Bai's body. If it was left alone, Taoist priest Bai's life would be in danger. She had no choice but to use Ji Du's demonic power to expel this sword chi. The sword chi was also very strange. When it came into contact with Ji Du's power, it no longer raged. Instead, it shrank back and defended. It didn't retreat or counterattack. It just let Xie Wei use her demonic power to slowly wear it down. When the little fairy was done, she wiped the sweat from her forehead and looked up. The instance had been declared destroyed. At this moment, her mind was clear and she understood many things. She looked at Sun Lang, who was standing leisurely, and gritted her teeth. "You deliberately delayed me?" Sun Lang nodded. "Yes, it was a mess just now. If you came to join in the fun, it would be painful to get beaten up. Why bother?" Xie Wei didn't speak. She looked at the hall. Blood flowed, and there were many corpses on the ground. Some were headless, some were cut in half, and some had their chests smashed. They were dressed in bright clothes and had noble identities, but they died so silently. She couldn't help but think of the bloody scene she saw in Huaichuan when Bai Yue went on a killing spree. At that time, the scene was several dozen times worse than it was now. At that time, she was deeply shocked and furious. But now, Xie Wei's mood was far heavier than it was at that time. It was even more sorrowful, even more painful and sad. She closed her eyes and said in a low voice, "Do you really like killing?" Sun Lang waved his hand and said, "Look at what you're saying. I'm not that kind of idiot who enjoys killing. Look, even though I killed a few people suspected to be running dogs from Tensei province and those fellows with ulterior motives, I still spared quite a few lives. Look, Sanskrit Temple's Baldi, Xingyang Palace's Oxnos, and those other people. Even though they suffered a bit, for better or for worse, I still spare their lives, right?" Leaning against a pillar, Master Jing coughed twice. His face was rather pale, and his two blades had been shattered into pieces of metal. He said in a low voice, "Esteemed one's martial arts are so high that this poor monk has never heard of it. Even calling you number one under the heavens wouldn't be an exaggeration. Esteemed one has a grudge with Tensei province and is on good terms with the Bai family. You definitely aren't a nobody." Sun Lang said indifferently, "Just shut your mouth and watch. I spared your life because it was useful, not for you to run your mouth here. Those bald donkeys from Sanskrit Temple aren't bad. Don't stir up trouble for them." Master Jing smiled bitterly and closed his mouth. At this time, Xie Wei had already opened her eyes, a trace of sadness flashing through them. She looked straight at Sun Lang. "If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I really wouldn't have imagined how you killed people. I also wouldn't have thought that you could kill people without any burden." Sun Lang smiled. "Everything is difficult at the beginning. You'll get used to it after killing for a while." Xie Wei gritted her teeth. "Were my parents also killed by you so casually?" Sun Lang was slightly startled. He then shook his head and chuckled. "That's not the case. My mood back then was a bit heavier than now." He seemed to have thought of something and couldn't help but sigh. His interest waned, and he said, "All right, let's stop chatting here. There's still proper business to do. Xie Wei, you said you wanted to stay here and watch and remember. Then you can watch for the time being. Put everything you see in your eyes and remember in your mind. Take a good look at the final outcome of the Bai family." Then he turned around and swaggered his back to Xie Wei, walking toward Bai Junming, who was lying on the ground. "Hey, those who can still breathe, take medicine if you need to, heal your wounds if you need to. Pitiful ones, you've been beaten up for no reason. Don't leave any hidden injuries." He spoke as he walked. Those who were lucky enough not to die looked at each other with difficulty. They then took out healing pills from their arms and slowly stuffed them into their mouths with depressed expressions. They then began to circulate their energy to adjust their breathing. Sun Lang had just defeated them. He didn't suppress them with force, but with unimaginable techniques. The shock and deterrence he caused them was far stronger than the former. This was because using force to suppress was just using profound skills and powerful moves to bully the weak. The latter represented a terrifying realm that they couldn't even imagine. It was a height that they could never reach in their lives. They couldn't even touch a corner of it. Therefore, at this moment, they no longer had the slightest thought of resisting. This was a powerhouse that they absolutely couldn't resist. If they deliberately resisted at this time, they would only die silently. Sun Lang walked in front of Bai Zhenming and reached out to grab his hair, lifting the head of the Bai family up. At this time, Bai Zhenming was still in severe pain and couldn't move at all. He was directly pulled up by his hair and let out a painful growl. Sun Lang whistled. His tone was gentle and calm. He smiled faintly. Where should we start? Bai Zhenming said weakly. If you want to kill, then kill. No need to talk so much. That won't do. Bai Zai, it's not easy for me to get angry. Do you think it's enough for me to just beat a few dozen people here? Sun Lang said with a smile. This is just the beginning. The good show has just begun. Hearing this, Bai Zhenming was shocked. He instinctively felt that something was not right. No, it can't be. The plan in Tensei province is perfect. I've already made the arrangements. I'll delay for a while and let it be proud for a while. When the agreed time comes, Brother Qing will mobilize his men and carry out the plan. At this moment, he heard Sun Lang say, You seem to be waiting for someone. What a coincidence. He seems to have arrived. At this moment, there was a thump. Something flew in through the window, bounced a few times on the ground, rolled for a while, and slowly stopped in front of Bai Zhenming. It was a human head. Bai Zhenming's eyes suddenly widened. It was his milk brother, his right-hand man, and his butler. Sun Lang patted his face. It seems that the person you're waiting for has arrived. The person I'm waiting for has also arrived. Chapter 676. After seeing the head clearly, Bai Zhenming felt a sharp pain in his heart, as if he had been hit by a heavy hammer. He felt that the world was spinning and twisting. It was as if he was surrounded by countless demons and ghosts, and all of them were laughing and howling at him. The person in front of him was his brother who had grown up with him. Last night, they were still talking as usual, and this morning he was still silently and firmly responding to his instructions as usual. Brother Qing was his right-hand man, his trusted brother. They had been friends since they were young. As long as it was something that he arranged, Brother Qing would do it well no matter what. In the past 2 days, he had decided to seek refuge in Tensei province. He had risked his life on the gambling table. He had already made up his mind to die, but he didn't say too much. He knew that Brother Qing would understand. Even if he died, Brother Qing would try his best to live on, and then assist the new head of the family. He would be cautious and conscientious as usual until the Bai family was revived. This was the tacit understanding between the master and the servant. But now his head was placed at his feet. His face was stained with blood, and his eyes were filled with pain and ferocity. It was as if he was struggling to carry out the orders of the head of the family until the last moment of his life. Then his head was chopped off. Bai Zhenming's eyes widened. Then he screamed. His voice was filled with pain and fear, because the death of the butler not only meant that he had lost a loyal brother, but it also meant that his plan was going to fail. It even meant that the worst-case scenario was that from the beginning, everything was under Sun Lang's control. In the silent hall, only Bai Zhenming could be heard yelling and struggling like a madman. Who is it? Who killed him? Was it that strange sword? How did you get help? Where did you get help from? Sun Lang grabbed Bai Zhenming's hair and firmly controlled his struggle. He said lightly, Since Mr. Bai wants to see you, then come in and say hello. We are respectable people. Even if we want to kill the whole family, we have to be polite. Master's right. Without rules, nothing can be accomplished. With rules, there must be etiquette. With etiquette, there must be a way. A slightly feminine and sharp voice sounded in everyone's ears. Someone pushed the door open and entered. The sunlight from behind the door shone on his body, but his face was hidden in the shadows. At first glance, people could only see his white hair as white as snow. Then that person walked in, and the door, which was made of expensive materials and had excellent soundproofing, automatically closed behind him. Thus, the room became a closed cage again. That person simply stood behind the door, but he had the aura of a great master. He was wearing a black robe, and his entire person exuded an extremely dangerous aura. He was like a spider that devoured the sunlight and had spun a fatal web. No one could rush out from his door. Then, the crowd clearly saw the appearance of the person who had come. It was an old man with snow-white hair. Unlike his demonic aura from before, he looked kind and gentle to the extreme, like an ordinary old man who was content with what he had and enjoyed the rest of his life. However, his lower jaw was clean, without a single strand of beard. Coupled with his amiable face and snow-white hair, he looked very strange. Then, everyone understood. This was an old eunuch who was extremely skilled in martial arts. The old man stepped over the bloodstains under his feet as if there was no one around. He passed by the martial arts heroes who couldn't help but reveal looks of disdain and arrived in front of Sun Lang and Bai Zhenming. Sun Lang smiled and casually pushed Bai Zhenming to the side, and he fell to the ground. The old man first carefully sized up Sun Lang. Although his expression was still calm, his eyes were excited. He lifted his robe and was about to kneel down to pay his respects. Sun Lang directly reached out and hugged him tightly, patting his back. He smiled and said, "Forget it. Old arms and legs, don't sprain your back. It's fine if your back hurts for a few days. I still need people to work here." The old man also smiled and nodded. Yes. Then, he seemed to remember Sun Lang's instructions. He turned his head to look at Bai Zhenming, who was lying on the ground. He didn't hide his sharp and feminine voice. "Wei Zhongxian greets Minister Bai." Sun Lang put his hand on his shoulder and added, "I used to be the logistics department head and quartermaster, but now I can only be an accountant." Wei Zhongxian smiled and said, "I don't dare. I'm just an old servant." Bai Zhenming stared at Wei Zhongxian. He didn't care if he was a logistics department head or an accountant. He held the head of the housekeeper in his arms and said sternly, "You're the castrated dog that killed Brother Qing?" Wei Zhongxian didn't get angry and said in a soft voice, "Minister Bai, please forgive me. Everyone is serving their own master. In this life, what I admire the most are filial and loyal officials who know how to repay kindness. If it wasn't for the circumstances, what harm is there in letting this friend go? Unfortunately, he wanted to harm my master, so there's nothing to say. But Minister Bai, don't worry. When this matter is over and your Bai family is wiped out, I will kowtow to my master and ask him to allow me to give this friend a proper burial. Wipe out the Bai family." Bai Zhenming laughed coldly. "Dream on." Wei Zhongxian lowered his head and said, "As the head of the Bai family, Minister Bai is diligent and responsible. He's not afraid of death and is an outstanding person. But it's a pity that his ability to judge the situation is lacking. Otherwise, he wouldn't have fallen to this state today." Bai Zhenming didn't understand what he meant. Sun Lang patted Wei Zhongxian's shoulder and said with a smile, "Little Bai, you promised me before that you would give your family business to me. Did you forget? But my memory is very good. If you want to give your family business to me, then of course I will. But I don't know much about finance and management. At the very least, I need someone who knows the business to help me check if there are any bad accounts, right? I came from a poor background and am afraid of being poor. That's why I'm more concerned about money. Moreover, I'm helping my master manage the finances. Even if it's a single coin, I have to check it clearly." Wei Zhongxian nodded and said, "Speaking of which, Mr. Bai is also a magnanimous person. A few days ago, you didn't hold back at all for my master. You even recorded all the documents and records in your residence for my master to read. My master has the world in his heart and doesn't care about trifles. He was too lazy to read those complicated documents. So he used his divine ability to record copies. When I came here a few days ago, I saw some things that I shouldn't have seen. He revealed a look of pity and shook his head. He sighed and said, 'It's not that I'm being nosy, but Minister Bai, your Bai family is really rotten. In this world, the first rule is to follow the rules. The higher the status, the more rules you have to follow. You have to do things quickly and cleanly. Some things have to be carefully kept. I only saw a small portion of those copies. The things that I sorted out are enough to make your Bai family go down in history and infamy. It's really sad and lamentable to manage a family like this. Bai Jinming's eyes widened, and he almost spat out blood. He glared at Sun Lang. You? At that time, Sun Lang kept saying that he wanted to read the secret books in his residence to find clues about Bai Yue's insanity. At that time, he was so scared of Sun Lang that he wouldn't dare to refuse even if he had 9 times the courage. Moreover, he had already pledged his loyalty to Sun Lang, so he simply gave Sun Lang the highest authority. Was he already planning to do this at that time? Sun Lang also shook his head and sighed. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being stupid. Bai Zai, who did you learn this bad habit of only caring about your head? Let's take yesterday and the day before as an example. At that time, you should have made contact with the Tensei province. On one hand, you secretly schemed against me. On the other hand, you pretended to be polite with me. On the other hand, you wanted to numb me and appease me. I took advantage of the situation and made a request to use the Bai family's resources. Unexpectedly, you agreed to everything and even gave me the highest authority. At this point, the corners of his mouth revealed a disdainful smile. I was born in the military, so I'm best at seizing opportunities. You gave me a great deal of leverage, so how could I not use it? Bai Jinming was shocked and struggled to stand up. He recalled the scene at that time. Sun Lang had gained a firm foothold in Jinyuan town and sent the plan letter. At the same time, the secret letter from the Tensei province had also arrived. It accurately predicted Sun Lang's plan and gave countermeasures. It was flawless. In addition, the persuasion conditions were very generous and sincere. In the end, he made a choice, but now it seemed he felt a sweetness in his throat and reluctantly swallowed the blood. He stared at Sun Lang, and his eyes became crazy. You saw through it from the beginning? Sun Lang shook his head and said, That's not it. I just guessed. After all, the Tensei province hasn't made a move for a long time. Instead of letting them mess around behind my back, it's better for me to give them a chance to make trouble so that the situation doesn't get out of control. All the arrangements I made before were just insurance measures. They were countermeasures in case of an unexpected situation. He looked at Bai Jinming without a trace of pity in his eyes and said lightly, I've said before that you choose your own path. Since you've already sided with me, if you do things honestly, I won't bother to deal with you. Those arrangements won't be of any use. From the beginning to the end, my only enemy is the Tensei province. But if you foolishly jump out and play dirty with me. At this point, Sun Lang's tone became serene. Then I'll play dirty with you. Bai Jinming was stunned for a moment and suddenly shouted, No, that's not it. You must have been prepared to deal with the Bai family since a long time ago. Otherwise, when did this old eunuch come here? When you were in the Bai family, I sent people to keep an eye on you. After you left the mountain, you never left the Bai family's eyes. How did you spread the news? How did Wei Zhongxin arrive in just 1 or 2 days from here? Sun Lang smiled faintly. About that, why don't you take a guess? Bai Jinming stared at Sun Lang and suddenly laughed wildly. You think you've already won? Are you proud of yourself? However, the Heavenly Policy Palace is still hiding in the dark. The elites and seedlings of the Bai clan have already left in secret. The Bai clan fort is now nothing but an abandoned pawn. If you want to kill them all, then kill them all. The more you kill, the more your bloodthirsty reputation will spread. Are you prepared for your reputation to take a nosedive? Are you prepared to face the attacks of my father's disciples and old friends? I disagree with all these points. Sun Lang smiled gently. Let's start with the third thing. He took out a strange little thing from his bosom and pressed a red button. Then, an earth-shattering roar sounded. Chapter 677. When Sun Lang took out a small gadget from his pocket, Bai Jinming still didn't know what it was. It was brass in color and was relatively thick, like a small inkstone. There was a brass metal wire at the top, and there was a red bump on the front. That protrusion should be a button. It was made in red, and it gave people the urge to press it and try it out. This was definitely not a good thing. Bai Jinming knew this the moment he saw it, because it was something that Sun Lang had taken out. But before he could react, Sun Lang had already pressed him down with a smile on his face. Then it was like thunder. No, it was more violent than the most violent thunder. A loud bang suddenly sounded, as if it was exploding right next to their ears. Then the ground shook, the sound waves roared, and the wind blew fiercely against the door and windows. It was as if a terrifying monster was shaking this sealed house with a powerful force. The violent sound was so shocking that it made the world go silent for a moment. Only the rumbling of thunder could be heard. But soon it calmed down. Then there was a light patter sound, an explosion, a faint scream, and the sound of collapsing. Then a few wisps of smoke and dust floated in from the cracks of the door and windows. Everyone smelled a pungent smell. Everyone was knowledgeable and knew what this smell was. Bai Jinming was stunned for a moment and shouted, This is gunpowder. What did you do?" Sun Lang shook the remote control in his hand and smiled. "It's a product of Li fire. It's a long-range explosion. You know, that group of old Russians specialize in firearms. They also have something unscientific like flame runes, so their technology tree is very crooked." "I'm not asking about that." Bai Jinming shouted. "I'm asking you, what did you do?" Sun Lang smiled and said, "Don't panic. It's your house's gate. First, it's very conspicuous. Once it explodes, it can be seen and heard from the foot of the mountain. Second, there are few people there. After the explosion, not many people will die. Oh, don't misunderstand. I just feel that it's too easy to be killed by a sudden explosion." Bai Jinming saw that he was beating around the bush and refused to get to the point. He roared in anger, "I'm asking you what you want to do." Sun Lang spread his hands and said, "Your memory is really bad. Did you forget what I told you before? You were worried that these martial artists would come up the mountain to settle the score with you. I gave you a suggestion. I said that you could invite the leaders to come up the mountain and then bury hundreds of thousands of pounds of explosives at the gate to blow them all up. But you didn't listen, so I had to do it myself. Fortunately, the old Russians' explosive ratio is perfect. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to get hundreds of thousands of pounds of explosives." He didn't wait for Bai Jinming to speak. He raised his hand and pointed at the many corpses on the ground and the injured martial artists. He smiled and said, "So, you see, Bai Jinming knew that he couldn't deny it, so he decided to go all out. He actually set up a killing trap. He pretended to trick all the martial artists into the Bai family and then detonated the explosives. He wanted to kill everyone in one fell swoop. Fortunately, he had a guilty conscience and was found out," Sun Lang said with a sorrowful expression. He sighed and said, "No one expected the Bai family to be so crazy. They were all unprepared. So many heroes were seriously injured, and many of our friends died." Sigh. Bai Jinming spat out a mouthful of blood and pounced on Sun Lang crazily. You are so vicious." Before Sun Lang could make a move, Wei Zhongxin took a step forward and stretched out his hand. At this moment, Bai Jinming was like a mad tiger and was completely unprepared. He was pushed back a few feet and fell to the ground. After doing all this, he took a step back and once again became the submissive old servant by Sun Lang's side. He lowered his head, bowed his waist, and said indifferently, "Minister Bai, be more dignified." Sun Lang looked at Bai Jinming and said with a smile, "What about me? Isn't this what you were planning? When I start killing people, I will send a signal to the foot of the mountain and create a commotion to lure the martial artists up the mountain. When they arrive, they will see me killing people. At that time, a real chaotic battle will begin. Since I kill people without distinguishing between right and wrong, then Bai Yue's murder in Huaichuan can also be blamed on me." Bai Jinming glared at Sun Lang without saying a word. Sun Lang sighed. "Vicious, really vicious. You are too shameless. Unfortunately, you miscalculated two things. First, with the martial arts of dozens of people, they won't be able to drag the main force up the mountain. Grandson, you should learn from your grandpa that I am not afraid of group fights. Second, I was the one who spread the news. How could I fall for your trick?" Bai Jinming suddenly opened his mouth, his teeth still stained with blood. He sneered. "So what? You want to beat them at their own game and tell the martial artists at the foot of the mountain that it was the Bai family who lit the gunpowder and wanted to kill these martial artists? Stop joking. Even if the people in the hall are cowardly and have agreed with you, those martial artists aren't fools. Can't they tell whether they were injured by the gunpowder? Besides, the people of Tensei province won't sit back and watch you turn the tables. Sun Lang shook his head and sighed. Wow, you are really stupid. There are 1,000 or 2,000 people at the foot of the mountain. How much effort would it take for me to sit down and reason with them and make up a story? Bai Zhenming's smile froze. He asked uneasily, what do you mean? This is related to the second thing you mentioned just now. The lives of the people of Bai Castle are so cheap. How can they be worthy of dirtying my hands? Sun Lang said, Little Yi, come out and greet Minister Bai. Then go and do your work. As soon as he finished speaking, a window on Bai Zhenming's left was pushed open. A swordsman was already standing outside the window. When the crowd saw him, they were shocked. His body was dirty, and his face and clothes were covered with black smoke. It was as if he had just survived a violent explosion. Sun Lang saw this and smiled. You are really dedicated. The swordsman also smiled, revealing his snow-white teeth that contrasted with the black smoke on his face. Even though he was in a sorry state, his posture was confident and at ease, like a gentleman. He saluted Bai Zhenming and said indifferently, Taihua Yuzhuan greets Minister Bai. As soon as he said this, everyone in the hall exclaimed. Even Bai Zhenming widened his eyes and looked at the swordsman who looked like a black coal ball. You're a jade swordsman? Taihua Yuzhuan, known as a scholar, had risen to fame in Jianghu in the past 2 years. Even Bai Zhenming had heard of his great name. It was said that his origin was not ordinary. In his early years, he should have been training in the army. After the Great War of Tianyuan ended, he hung up his hat and left. Because he was righteous and awe-inspiring, with the air of a gentleman, his face was like jade, and his appearance was dignified. As the saying goes, a gentleman is like jade, so he had the beautiful title of Jade Sword Guest. Who would have thought that he would appear here? Moreover, it seemed like he had become Sun Lang's lackey. No, he should have been here long ago. While everyone was still in shock, Sun Lang said, All right, go. Be careful on the road. Bai Zhenming didn't know what Sun Lang wanted Yuzhuan to do. He saw Jade Swordsman salute Sun Lang respectfully. When he raised his head again, his calm expression suddenly changed. A complicated expression of anger, unwillingness, grief, and fear appeared on his face that was covered in black ash. In front of everyone, the jade sword artist, who was famous throughout the pugilistic world and had a graceful bearing, let out a roar. His shock and anger were evident on his face. He pulled out the long sword at his waist, turned around, and left, leaving behind a heaven-shaking and earth-shaking roar. By family bastards, I will not live under the same sky as you. What was going on? Everyone in the hall was dumbfounded when they saw Yuzhuan's sudden change. Then, Sun Lang said with a smile, I wonder where he went. This hero Yu is a reclusive person, but he is cold on the outside, but warm on the inside. When he heard about the incident in Huaichuan, although he doesn't like to mingle with others, he still secretly went up the mountain to pay attention to the development of the situation. It was because of this that he escaped the disaster. He was only blown up by the explosion. Therefore, when Hero Yu was blown up by the explosion and saw more than 20 respectable Jianghu heroes being blown up by the crazy Bai family, the anger and pain in his heart were indescribable. However, he was very calm. He knew that he couldn't fight against the entire Bai family alone, so he chose to break out of the encirclement immediately. He wanted to rush down the mountain and bring this sad news to the Jianghu people at the foot of the mountain. After Sun Lang finished speaking, he also let out a sad sigh. He looked at Bai Zhenming and shook his head. Sigh. For something like this to happen, no one would have wanted it to happen. Think about it. If the Jianghu heroes at the foot of the mountain heard that the Bai family had done such a despicable thing, what would they do? There are probably two possibilities. First, they were frightened. Although they wouldn't run away, they wouldn't rush up the mountain either. They would probably stay where they were and watch and quarrel. Secondly, when they heard the infuriating news, they flew into a rage. When they thought of the seniors of their sex and the seniors of the Jianghu who had suffered heavy casualties, they were filled with rage. With sabers and spears in their hands, They rushed up the mountain without caring about anything else. They wanted to avenge their dead seniors with blood. After Sun Lang finished speaking, he nodded at Bai Jinming. I think they would definitely choose the second option. First, you saw it yourself. Little Yi's acting skills are very good, and he is also very good at inciting others. Second, I have planted people in the Jianghu team at the foot of the mountain. They are all Jianghu people from Songzhou. I don't need to say more about who the boss of Songzhou is, right? Bai Jinming couldn't imagine a scene of thousands of angry Jianghu people rushing up the mountain. The Bai family fort, which had been run for more than a dozen generations, the huge family business, the people in the fort. He trembled and almost vomited his heart out. He looked at Sun Lang and said hoarsely, "You are so cruel. You are so cruel." Sun Lang said calmly, "Every path is chosen by oneself, just like how your father chose a path and brought about today's disaster for the Bai family, just like how you chose the same path and brought about the current situation. Even the Jianghu people at the foot of the mountain are the same. The Bai family is a huge family business with countless treasures, women, and resources. They were provoked by blood, and hatred. In the name of righteous revenge, the entire Bai family was open to them. The evil thoughts, the desire to destroy, and the greed in their hearts will drive them to do things they wouldn't normally do. Every path is chosen by oneself. I don't even need to do anything to destroy the Bai family fort. These famous disciples and Jianghu heroes will do it for them." Sun Lang pointed at the Jianghu people who had different expressions on their faces and said calmly, "And this is why they had to cooperate with me to lie. Bai Jinming, you are not qualified to play dirty." Chapter 678. Silence reigned in the hall. Even though Sun Lang had openly revealed his vicious plan to kill Bai Jinming with a borrowed knife, no one uttered a word. Firstly, they were intimidated by Sun Lang's martial prowess. Secondly, this plan was too vicious. Bai Jinming's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. His fingers dug into the ground like hooks as he stared at Sun Lang. It was hard to tell if he was feeling hatred, despair, or regret. All of these emotions had lost their meaning. Sun Lang stared at him. There was no pride or joy in his eyes. This was just a part of the plan. Since he already knew the outcome, there was no sense of accomplishment to speak of. He said, "With the cooperation from the inside and the outside, it is not difficult to kill our way in. You have made two stupid mistakes before. First, you allowed me to read all the books and records of the Bai clan. Second, you agreed to let me use all the resources of the Bai clan. Therefore, I've already figured out the ins and outs of the Bai clan and made the corresponding arrangements. Soon, the Bai clan fort will become a bloody arena." Bai Jinming had rushed forward several times during this period. He tried to bite and attack in vain, but Wei Zhongxian blocked his attacks. He could not run away because Sun Lang had said that he would let him know the reason behind his death. Therefore, he could not even commit suicide because Sun Lang had also said that he would let him cry enough before he died. Sun Lang stared at him and said calmly, "Therefore, very soon, the clan that you want to protect and the business that you want to revive will collapse. The accumulated wealth will be plundered, the powerless clansmen will be slaughtered, the magnificent mansions will be burned down, and the aristocratic clans that have existed for thousands of years will be destroyed overnight. Those Jianghu, people who kill out of righteous anger and hatred, will have their hearts occupied by greater and purer evil. They kill, they burn, they plunder because humans are all like this. The so-called kindness and integrity are fragile and will often be replaced by something even more fanatical and restless. The so-called perseverance will not be able to withstand a single blow. Thus, they will feel joy because of this. They will even enjoy killing, enjoy destruction, and enjoy everything that you hold dear." The corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. Murder, arson, and abuse of the weak. These are all the actions of a demon. They go against the path of chivalry. Because their blood is boiling, they will do things that they wouldn't dare to do normally. When the dust settles and they stand on the ruins of the Bai family, they will feel lost, they will feel pain, and they will feel regret. After all, they used to think of themselves as chivalrous heroes, but At this point, Sun Lang's tone became cold and indifferent, as if he was a Buddha standing in the clouds, overlooking all living beings. And I will define their evil deeds as good. Bai Zhenming stared blankly at Sun Lang. At this moment, his emotions were in turmoil, and his mind was in a mess. He couldn't understand what Sun Lang was saying. Sun Lang's expression was indifferent. There was no pity or hesitation. It was as if he was talking about some trivial matter, even if it meant countless suffering and thousands of lives were lost. He said, "Murder and destruction, abuse and destruction, these evil deeds will become noble as long as they are justified. I learned this from humans 2 years ago. Today, I will return it to Bai Yue. When those martial artists wake up, they will feel lost and panicked by the evil deeds they have done. Then, I will raise the banner of chivalry above their heads." He pointed at Wei Zhongxian behind him. When the Bai family's castle is reduced to ruins, a joint judgment hall will be built on top of the ruins. The evil deeds recorded in the Bai family's secret records will be revealed under the sun, and all the heroes will know. I will let them know your evil deeds, your ugly deeds. I will let them know that they are not committing murder and arson, but punishing evil and promoting good. They will slowly believe it. They will slowly convince themselves. They will slowly feel at ease, and they will slowly consider themselves as heroes. They will curse the Bai family even more. They will think that their actions are justified and that no one can punish them. Then, with the lingering taste of murder and destruction, and with the loot they have plundered, they will return home satisfied. In order to not fall into the abyss of morality, they will come to a consensus and work hard to spread this consensus. They will spread the word that the Bai family is insane and deserve punishment. They will hide the truth that shouldn't exist. They will believe that they are doing good deeds, and their actions are beyond reproach. Jianghu is a circle, and everyone has their own circle. Therefore, their masters, their elders, their disciples, everyone will be pulled into this new circle, and together they will maintain this lie. Sun Lang extended his hand and pointed at the martial artists who were lucky enough to survive in the hall. In fact, these people who are of virtue and prestige also have to protect the reputation of their disciples and their sections. They have to work with me and spread the truth. Even if some of them want to expose everything because of their conscience, the others will stop them. There's no need for me to do anything. This is also a circle. After saying all this, he looked at Bai Zhenming and said lightly, "Bai Zhenming, you're not qualified to play dirty." Bai Zhenming's body was trembling. His eyes were filled with madness, and he was murmuring to himself. He had lost so badly that he was on the verge of breaking down. Sun Lang mercilessly stabbed him again. If the Bai castle is destroyed, the reputation of the Bai family will also fall into the abyss. Even if you send away your elites and seeds in advance, what can you do? Since you have lost your value and become the target of public criticism, you have lost your greatest value. Even if you manage to escape, will the Dog Emperor and the Tensei province care about you? Bai Zhenming raised his head abruptly, like a wolf that had fallen into a desperate situation, an intense, murderous glint flashing in his eyes. Sun Lang turned a blind eye to it and said blandly, "Also, whether or not they can escape from Qinzhou is another matter altogether. Since I can access the documents of your Bai family, I can also mobilize the resources of your Bai family. Together with some external intelligence, I can also make some inferences about the movements of your elite clansmen. If your progress is good, you can also go on the road to the underworld in order." Bai Zhenming finally broke down. His lips trembled as tears rolled down his cheeks. The last bit of his backbone had vanished completely, and it was obvious how miserable the despair and pain in his heart was. He roared furiously, screamed, and howled. His voice was so miserable that it caused the crowd to sigh sadly. He charged madly towards Sun Lang, but he was still stopped by Wei Zhongxian. Sun Lang said, "Old Wei, stay here and watch him. Don't let him die. I will go out and clear the place. There are still a few martial arts masters in the Bai family." Wei Zhongxian nodded. Sun Lang was about to leave when he suddenly heard a familiar shout. "Stop!" Sun Lang turned around and looked at Xiaowei. "What do you want?" Little Fairy looked at Sun Lang with shock and disbelief in her eyes. It was the first time she saw the man in front of her. She never thought that a person could be so evil. Xiaowei was not too shocked when he revealed his peerless martial arts and easily defeated more than 20 Jianghu experts. First, she had Ji Du's guidance, and second, she had some estimation of Sun Lang's martial arts. Even when Sun Lang casually slaughtered people, the shock she felt was far less than what she felt now. This time was different. Sun Lang coldly and mercilessly destroyed all of Bai Zhiming's plans. He also mercilessly grabbed his opponent's throat and played with the lives of the Bai family in the palm of his hand. He could annihilate them all with a flip of his hand. Everyone was his chess piece. Whether it was the people of the Bai family or those at the foot of the mountain, he only needed to say a few words to turn black and white upside down. Xiaowei was shocked and even trembled when she saw Sun Lang's indifferent and ruthless Sun Lang. She looked at Sun Lang and couldn't suppress the trembling in her voice. She even felt weak. She muttered, "You are not Sun Lang. The Sun Lang I know is not like this." Sun Lang said, "I should be like this, or even worse. It's just that there was a small mistake." Xiaowei shook her head. No, the Sun Lang I know is a little bad, and his thoughts are a little extreme, but he is not an evil person. I can see very clearly that he is not an evil person. He is not the current you. Even good and evil are reversed. Black and white are reversed, and people are treated as toys. He has no respect for life. Sun Lang shook his head. "You are wrong. I have always been like this." Little Fairy vehemently denied, "No, it's not like this. I'm a horned tiger. I can't be wrong. You should be a kind person." "How? Kind person? What a joke. I killed your parents and clan, and I made you an orphan since you were a child. If such a person is a kind person, then were your parents?" Sun Lang said lightly, "Are they stupid or bad?" Xiaowei's expression suddenly turned cold when she heard this. She now sadly realized that her relationship with Sun Lang had undergone an irreversible change. She could no longer argue with him about right and wrong, nor could she discuss good and evil with him. After the truth was revealed, right and wrong had become clear. Hatred had divided them into irreconcilable camps. Sun Lang continued, "So, there's no need to say more. You can't change anything, and you can't make me stop. You can't do anything, so just watch from here. At least remember the truth, and remember the final outcome of the Bai family." After a while, Xiaowei showed a bitter smile and slowly nodded. "Yes, that's right, I was wrong. You're a big bad guy who pretends to be good. You were just deceiving me. You're actually a cold-blooded and cruel villain. You just have other plans. That's why you acted so well. You killed my parents' clan and casually killed thousands of people. How could such a person be a good person?" Sun Lang's expression was neither sad nor happy. He nodded and said, "It's good that you know." Xiaowei whispered, I know. The dagger sharpened by the young horn appeared in Xiaowei's hand. Little Fairy clenched her teeth, and her eyes contained extremely complex emotions as she rushed toward Sun Lang. Sun Lang looked at her expressionlessly and said, "Let her be quiet." Wei Zhongxian quietly took a step forward. Little Fairy saw this, and 2 lines of tears rolled down her cheeks. She shouted, "Why don't you do it yourself? Kill me if you want. Just kill me." Wei Zhongxian raised his hand and grabbed Xiaowei. But in the next moment, the old man's complexion greatly changed. With a loud bang, the wall shattered and a man rushed in like lightning, roaring, "Don't hurt her." Chapter 679. Someone broke through the wall and entered. With a loud bang, rubble flew everywhere and half of the wall collapsed. The violent figure knocked away the flying dust and rushed in unstoppably, punching towards Wei Zhongxian. Sun Lang snorted and reached out to press down on Wei Zhongxian's shoulder, pulling the old man back. At the same time, his left hand returned to the wind-whisking willow, gently wrapping around the newcomer's fist and casually flinging it away. The other party didn't continue fighting. He grabbed the stunned Xiaowei and floated back dozens of feet, distancing himself from Sun Lang. When the little minx saw who it was, she was shocked. "You? Why are you here?" That person's hair was unkempt and his beard was disheveled. Like Wei Zhongxian, his hair was also white and fluttering in the wind. However, he was much taller and more muscular than Wei Zhongxian. That was the physique of a peerless expert, as well as the bearing of a famous general who had been on the battlefield for decades. It was the Golden Radiant Sword Saint by Yue Wei. At this moment, his eyes were like lightning and his bearing was solemn. He protected Xie Wei behind him. He was as tall as a mountain, and his indomitable figure was like the straightest flag on the battlefield. Xie Wei's mind suffered a great impact due to the sudden change. In order to verify the terrible truth, she forced Bai Yue, who had returned to his youth, to the abandoned house. Through the violent spiritual force field in the house, she recalled the memories that Bai Yue didn't want to recall the most. Finally, she found out the culprit who destroyed the entire family. Although she was forced to do so, after calming down, she felt very guilty. At this moment, seeing Bai Yue descending from the sky and protecting her without caring about the past, the little demoness was both shocked and ashamed. She said in a low voice, "Grandpa Bai, let me go. He will kill you. You should leave quickly." When Bai Zhenming saw his father arrive in a desperate situation, he didn't know what to feel. His words were filled with regret, tears, and hope. He had obviously messed up everything, but the appearance of his father gave him a glimmer of hope. He hoped that the omnipotent father in his memory could turn the tide and correct the mistakes he had made. "Father!" Bai Yue didn't speak. He stood in place and looked at Sun Lang with cold eyes, not saying a word. At first, the Wulin heroes in the hall were beaten dizzy by Sun Lang, but because they were afraid of this man's impressive and fierce power, they did not dare to act blindly without thinking. Later, when they heard Sun Lang's vicious scheme, which included them as well, they felt a chill in their hearts. But it was an open scheme from beginning to end. They could not resist, nor did they dare to resist. They only dared to be angry, but did not dare to say anything. But now, when they saw the legendary Golden Radiant Sword Saint appear like a divine weapon and confront Sun Lang, they couldn't help but feel excited. They even subconsciously ignored Bai Yue's identity as the Huai Chuan murderous demon. Although both Bai Zhenming and Sun Lang had said that Bai Yue had gone mad, Old Master Bai still looked majestic and domineering. Just by standing there, he exuded the aura of a peerless expert. How could such an aura and posture make him seem like a madman? He was clearly the renowned Golden Radiance Sword Saint. He wasn't mad. It was good that he wasn't mad. Not mad meant that he could fight Sun Lang. Not mad meant that there was hope for him to turn the tables. It was good that he wasn't mad. If it wasn't for the fact that Sun Lang had exerted too much pressure on the crowd before, to the point that these old and wise men didn't dare to act rashly, there would have been people cheering for Bai Yue. When Wei Zhongxian saw Bai Yue, his amiable and honest old face turned serious. His hands were tucked into his sleeves, and his body was tense, ready to strike at any moment. Sun Lang looked at Bai Yue from head to toe and didn't say a word. The entire Bai castle was in chaos. Whether it was the earth-shattering explosion, Yu Zhuoran's words when he rushed down the mountain, or the commotion caused by the martial artists at the foot of the mountain, all of these things were pressing down on the Bai clan. Bai Zhenming was lying on the ground like a dead dog. The butler he entrusted with the important task was now a headless corpse. Due to the lack of a unified command, the Bai clan was in chaos. Shouts, cries, and shouts could be faintly heard. However, no one in the room acted rashly. Everyone knew that the outcome of this battle would determine the final outcome. Wei Zhongxian squinted his eyes and said slowly, "Master, this old servant wishes to fight." The sudden appearance of the crazy Bai Yue, who looked like he had recovered from his madness, was the first variable to appear so far. Wei Zhongxian wanted to test Bai Yue's strength and condition on behalf of Sun Lang. However, Sun Lang sneered and said, "There's no need to go through so much trouble. I've already seen through it, so that's how it is. How boring." Wei Zhongxian lowered his hands and said, "This old servant is slow-witted. Master, please enlighten me." Sun Lang laughed and said, "Of course, I'm referring to this old man's bluff." When he said the words bluff, he took a step forward with each word. He was just taking normal steps, but his figure was like a ghost. He crossed a distance of more than 100 feet in 4 steps. When he said the word momentum, he was already in front of Bai Yue. Without saying a word, he punched out. Bai Yue saw that Sun Lang was so decisive, and his expression changed dramatically. He shook his shoulders and pushed Xiaowei back. Then he shouted and ignored Sun Lang's punch. His 10 fingers were like steel claws as he chopped towards Sun Lang's head. It turned out to be a mutual destruction move. Sun Lang leaned sideways and raised his right arm. He bent his left arm and slammed his elbow into Bai Yue's chest. At the same time, Bai Yue staggered back. However, after Bai Yue stood firm, he rushed over unstoppably. His hand slashed and clawed at Bai Yue. At the same time, he shouted, "Go! Everyone go!" The heroes saw that Bai Yue was attacking Sun Lang again and again, as if he was holding this terrible guy back. Their hearts were moved. Although they didn't say anything, they began to pay attention to their surroundings. They were waiting for that hero to step forward and be a pathfinder. Even Bai Zhenming, who had fallen to the ground, was adjusting his breathing and converging his thoughts. He was like a wolf that had seen a glimmer of life, and sharp light flashed in his eyes. The appearance of Bai Yue made them all restless. However, at the next moment, someone said ambiguously, "Old Bai, you must be joking. With me here, where can they run to?" The heroes were shocked at first, and then almost fell to the ground and cursed. This bastard. For a moment, they actually forgot that the old eunuch was still here. At the same time, Sun Lang also laughed. "Yes, where can you run to? It's better to stay and be Bai Yue's. Hey, mate, come." His last few words were like a thunderclap, exploding in everyone's ears. Sun Lang's voice and body were one. This thunderclap like roar and thunderclap like attack fused together. Every word was accompanied by a powerful and heavy blow. With a few booming sounds, the hard stone floor under Bai Yue's feet suddenly shattered. With him as the center, spiderweb-like cracks continuously spread in all directions. Bai Yue didn't care about the consequences, using a fast attack that was close to mutual destruction. In a moment, he was actually forced into a disadvantageous position by Sun Lang's normal attack and defense. His 2 hands blocked Sun Lang's 2 arms, the muscles in his arms bulging inch by inch, the blood vessels protruding, cold sweat dripping down his face. Sun Lang's expression was calm, looking straight at Bai Yue in front of him. His eyes were open and fierce, carrying an undisguised killing intent and sadness from the past, openly looking at the enemy in front of him. And Bai Yue, his eyes were evasive, retreating, and cowardly. This was not the eyes of an elder of 3 dynasties, a peerless general, and the gold radiant sword saint. No matter what, it was not the eyes. That was why Sun Lang said that he was bluffing, and that was why he was defeated so quickly. Sun Lang let out a mocking sneer, not knowing if he was more disappointed or angry. He said coldly, "Your martial arts are back. Your internal energy is back. You also know how to dodge and parry. You are not so resistant to beatings, but you are defeated even faster. The more you remember, the faster you are defeated, because you haven't remembered everything, because you're still a madman, because you're still not the real Bai Yue. Really laughable." Bai Yue screamed, bent his knees, and knelt down on the ground with a bang. His knees pressed on the broken stone slabs, and a huge impact spread to the whole hall, even shaking the whole house. Bai Yue shouted, bent his knees, and knelt down on the ground. His knees pressed on the broken stone slabs, and the huge impact spread to the whole hall, even shaking the whole house. When the heroes of the martial arts world who had been disloyal saw this, they almost shouted out in fear. If what happened today was spread outside, it would definitely shake the world. That was the Gold Radiant Sword Saint, one of the 7 Radiant Sword Saints. With the extraordinary cultivation of the great Grandmaster, he controlled the world's best divine weapon. His destructive power and threat were already at the top of the world. But at this moment, when his family was about to be destroyed, he was actually forced to kneel down by someone's strength. They looked at Sun Lang as if they were looking at a monster that should not have appeared in the world. Today's scene would be unforgettable for them, and they would never be able to summon the courage to fight against this person for the rest of their lives. Sun Lang, on the other hand, had done such an earth-shattering thing and accomplished an achievement that was enough to shock the martial arts world, but there was no trace of complacency on his face. He looked down at Bai Yue condescendingly and said lightly, 2 days ago, you were still an 8-year-old retard. I haven't seen any movement in the past 2 days. How did you suddenly remember so many things? What else did you remember? Bai Yue struggled to block Sun Lang's hands and stared at Sun Lang. His eyes were terrifyingly complicated. There was hatred, guilt, distortion, fear, and avoidance. All the personalities that he had shown in the past 10 days were actually reflections of the deepest part of his heart. He had once regarded Sun Lang as his nephew, and he had once earnestly hoped that Sun Lang could take over his position and lead the country's army in his place, supporting the dignity of the country and the happiness of the people. But between the country and himself, he had chosen the former. He had swallowed the unimaginable bitter fruit, and he had also pushed Sun Lang into the hell with his own hands. As someone who had experienced the battle of the Great Desolate Mountain, no one understood the despair and pain in Sun Lang's heart better than him. Because his despair and pain were equal. They were actually all victims, the last souls of the dead who were still wandering on the Tianyuan battlefield 2 years after the war ended. Chapter 680. When Sun Lang easily pushed Bai Yue to his knees, Xie Wei was the first to realize the truth. Bai Yue did not retrieve his memories. The person in front of him was still the muddle-headed soul from before. He only remembered many things because of the intense stimulation in the abandoned house, but he did not remember everything. Perhaps he had recalled many memories of the past, thus recovering his martial arts, releasing his inner strength, and even remembering many things of the past, so that the bravado just now had almost scared everyone. But after all, he was still not his former self. He had only imitated his past appearance, perfectly according to his own memories. Just as Sun Lang had said, he was not the real Bai Yue. As a famous general of the current generation who had experienced hundreds of battles and was unparalleled in the world, the gold radiant sword saint's mind was as firm as iron. He would not avoid or retreat when facing an enemy. No matter how strong the enemy was, how could he be defeated so quickly? Therefore, when faced with Sun Lang's question, he could only grit his teeth and not answer. He did not know anything. He had only rushed in to save people based on pure instinct and kindness, even if he had to face an extremely terrifying enemy. Sun Lang continued to ask, I can feel the surging gold radiance, sword chi in your body, but I still can't sense the location of the holy sword. Do you remember the whereabouts and information of the holy sword? Now that I've said it, the Bai family's destruction is imminent. No one can stop my will. However, there's still a lot of room for maneuver. I can still make the Bai family's reputation sound better and let the innocent survivors live a little longer. Bai Yue's face was filled with anger, but he did not say a word. Clearly, he could hear Sun Lang's threat and malice, but he could not answer his question. Sun Lang sighed slowly. Useless thing. He looked at Bai Yue, and his face gradually turned cold. If that's the case, then I'll help you remember. Bai Yue was still in a state of confusion due to the loss of his memories, but his intuition and consciousness were much clearer. He realized that danger was approaching and roared. He dodged to the side and then kicked at Sun Lang. Sun Lang smiled faintly and lifted his foot to step on the bend of Bai Yue's leg. The old man roared in pain and swung his arm to attack, but Sun Lang lifted his foot and kicked Bai Yue up. He reached out to block his clumsy counterattack and sent him flying with a punch. He rolled on the ground for a long distance. Before Bai Yue landed on the ground, Sun Lang had already approached him like a ghost. He grabbed Bai Yue's head and slammed it on the ground. The stone floor shattered, and the blood on the ground was shaken into a fine blood mist, blowing in all directions. Sun Lang held Bai Yue down and raised his fist to hit him. Do you want to remember after I kill you? Or do you want to remember after the Bai family is burned to ashes? Fists fell like raindrops, all aimed at Bai Yue's head. The sound of exploding beans echoed in the air. Stone chips were flying everywhere, and the ground was shaking. The crowd saw Sun Lang pressing Gold Radiance sword saint to the ground and beating him up. That violent aura and the terrifying scene scared these famous heroes a long time ago. Bai Yue let out a series of beast-like roars and struggled with all his might. His hands scratched wildly, his feet kicked wildly, and he even broke the stone floor under him. However, Sun Lang's fists were still landing on his head. Bai Jinming saw his father in such a miserable state, and he screamed madly, "Father!" Without caring about anything else, he rushed towards Sun Lang. Life and death to him meant nothing. Perhaps death was the only release. Sun Lang flicked his finger in the air, and a sharp chi burst out, hitting Bai Jinming's chest. The head of the Bai family flew out and spat out a mouthful of blood, howling in pain. I said I would let you cry enough before we set off. Where are we now? Bai Jinming rolled on the ground, struggling. Although the attack just now did not take his life, it caused him great pain. He struggled with all his might, trying to stand up, but he fell down again and again. His face was pressed against the cold stone floor. When he opened his eyes, he saw Sun Lang grabbing his father's head, forcing his father to look in his direction. His father's old face was unprecedentedly battered. His face was stained with blood and dust, and his hair was also stained with blood and dust. His beard and hair were messy, and he looked worse than the most battered beggar. Do you see your son? He is as stupid as you were back then. Back then, you suffered retribution, and now it is his turn. He heard Sun Lang say, "He will die, you will die, your whole family will die, your whole family will die," and he will watch his family die with his own eyes. You will also watch all of this, and you will also watch him die with your own eyes. You will lose everything, but there is a difference in the process. Do you want to remember now, or do you want to wait until they are all dead? Do you want to finish the unfinished battle 2 years ago for your family and your son? Do you want to welcome the destiny of being a soldier with a bang? Or do you want to come late after everything is over, kneeling on the ruins, roaring and regretting helplessly, and welcoming the final destruction like a madman? Sun Lang grabbed Bai Yue's hair and pressed him to the ground. He used a lot of force, but his tone was very calm. No matter what the process is, I am looking forward to it. I hope to see you soon, because we haven't seen each other for 2 years. But I have patience, and I can wait. I have waited for 2 years, and a few more hours won't make a difference, but he smiled. His face was not stained with blood, but his smile was overflowing with blood. But can you still wait? Bai Jinming struggled and roared. Let go of my father. If you have the ability, come at me. I have offended you. I wanted to harm you. He doesn't know anything. Sun Lang sighed. Stupid words again. Bai Jinming, the one who has a grudge against me is your father. Who do you think you are? Bai Yue roared and struggled. Sun Lang raised his fist again, but the next moment, a strong wind blew behind him. Let go of Grandpa Bai. Sun Lang kicked Bai Yue to the side and dodged. He said lightly, Here it comes again. If you think I am in the way, then kill me. As long as I am alive, I can't watch you do bad things. Xiao Wei waved the dagger in his hand and shouted, Sun Lang, you told me that hatred will devour a person. Don't you realize what you have become? Do you want to let hatred devour you? Sun Lang said lightly, Old Wei. Wei Zhongxian approached like a ghost. Xiao Wei retreated a few steps and shouted, Sister Lu, how long are you going to watch? The roof tiles shattered and purple light flashed. The demon's sword swooped down and fell into Xiao Wei's hand. The bitch was flustered and exasperated. You want to fight with him? The demonic sword swallowed and spat. Xiao Wei's demonic power boiled, and purple flames flickered in her eyes. She held the sword in her hand and said decisively, Do you want to see Sun Lang become like this? The sword spirit was startled at first. Xiao Wei didn't say anything and stabbed at Wei Zhongxian, wanting to force this troublesome old eunuch back. However, Sun Lang was faster than her. A white shadow flashed, and Sun Lang approached silently. He stretched out his hand and flicked the sword. Do you think you can change anything with just your mind? With just a light flick, the demonic power in Xia Wei's body violently fluctuated and a huge force surged. Half of her body was numb, and she involuntarily retreated. Sun Lang was just about to snatch the demon sword when a roar came from behind. Bai Yue, who had regained his freedom, rushed up again. At the same time, Xia Wei regrouped and stabbed with her sword. Sun Lang snorted and changed his position. His footwork changed, and he flashed behind Bai Yue. He pushed out his palms, and Bai Yue couldn't dodge in time. He was pushed by the huge force and rushed towards the tip of Xia Wei's sword. The little demoness was shocked and quickly retracted her sword. Bai Yue also tried his best to turn around, but Sun Lang had already found the opportunity and appeared beside Xia Wei. He stretched out his hand and punched the demon's sword. Xia Wei was sent flying with her sword and spat out a small mouthful of blood. The bitch cursed in the air. Such a heavy hand. The little demoness crashed to the ground, and the demon sword almost fell out of her hand. She struggled to stand up, and Sun Lang had already pressed down on Bai Yue's head. Bai Yue wanted to struggle, but he heard a thunderous roar. Bai Yue. He was shocked and subconsciously raised his head. He saw Sun Lang's eyes. It was as if there was a burning flame, hot, evil, painful, and desperate. The kind of gaze was also familiar to him, because the memories and scenes reflected in those eyes were also what he had experienced, what he and Sun Lang remembered together, what they had faced, and what they had suffered. That was hell. Bai Yue was stunned. His body was trembling because the terrifying scene also appeared in his mind. Sun Lang Sun Ran said, "Since you can't remember, then I will help you remember. Old man Bai, look at your current appearance. You are like a useless old dog. How long are you going to hide? Are you so afraid? Do you want to escape? Do you not want to face it? Bai Yue, I didn't escape. I didn't forget. I came to find you. What right do you have to escape?" The golden radiance sword saint's body slowly trembled because of fear. The ancient and terrifying scene was reviving in his soul. Sun Lang looked deeply into his eyes. You don't have much time left. Your son is going to die. Your family is going to be destroyed. Everything is repeating itself. I want to see your choice this time. It is time to end it. It is time to be free. Bai Yue, you are going to die here. This is an irreversible fate. But this time, you can at least choose your own way of dying. So, go, think of a way. Remember, you don't deserve to die in my hands now. Your holy sword, your soul, they're all gone. Bring them to find me. You don't have much time left. Sun Lang released the hand that was strangling Bai Yue's neck and took 2 steps back. He looked at the soulless who was trembling in fear and said, "Now get out." Bai Yue cried. He grabbed his head. Suddenly, big drops of tears rolled down. He couldn't stop himself from crying. He didn't know what to do at this time. The terrifying memories kept coming back. All the despair and sadness were reviving. They kept gnawing at his soul, making him scream crazily and sorrowfully. Then he ran away. He didn't care about his son's screams of despair. He didn't care about the shock on the faces of the heroes. The golden radiant sword saint, who was famous in the past, ran away in front of everyone. He was in a sorry state and kept crying. He was in a worse state than the most useless deserter. Xia Wei reacted the fastest. She activated her demonic energy and rushed out with Bai Yue. Grandpa Bai. Wei Zhongxian was shocked as well. He whispered, "Master." Sun Lang looked back at him. The anger and killing intent in his eyes almost froze the old eunuch's soul, making him freeze in place. In the next moment, the killing intent in Sun Lang's eyes disappeared. He said indifferently, "I'm not her nanny." Then he looked around and said, "It was fun watching the show. Later, Old Wei will teach you how to speak. You all must learn well. Remember the fate of the Bai clan fort. Listen carefully." The heroes seemed to wake up from a dream and hurriedly responded. They looked at Sun Lang as if they were looking at a demon king who climbed out of hell. Xia Wei, who chased after them, quickly found Bai Yue's traces. At this time, the Bai clan was in chaos. Almost no one cared about them. She rode the demon's sword all the way back to the stable sword residence and easily found by Yue. At this time, Bai Yue was lying in the ruins of the temple. He curled up his body and trembled. He was like a frightened bird, muttering to himself and occasionally letting out a cry of despair. When he heard someone coming, his body instinctively trembled. When he saw Xie Wei, he shrank back. Xie Wei ran to his side and grabbed his shoulder. She anxiously said, "Grandpa Bai, you can't hide here anymore. Sun Lang doesn't know how many more people he will kill. We have to stop him." Hearing this name, Bai Yue's body trembled again. He said with a trembling voice, "I'm not going. I'm not going. Let him kill, let him kill." The legendary Gold Radiance Sword Saint had become like this. Xie Wei was shocked and sad. She suppressed the uneasiness in her heart and tried to calm down her voice. "Listen, Grandpa Bai, someone has to stop Sun Lang. This is your clan. Your son and your clansmen are in danger." Bai Yue suddenly raised his head and shouted at Xie Wei, "I'm not going. They're all dead. It's best if they're all dead. No one should live. This is how it should be." She looked at Bai Yue and shouted, "What are you saying? Even if it's someone unrelated to you, you should still help when they're in danger, right? You're a hero of Tianyuan, the greatest soldier in the world. How can you succumb to evil and bow your head to Sun Lang?" When Bai Yue heard this, a smile appeared on his face. "Hero of Tianyuan? The greatest soldier? Do you know what I've done?" Xie Wei's face darkened. She said softly, "I know. You wanted to harm Sun Lang and were killed by him. This is a big mistake. Not only did you hurt Sun Lang, but you also caused the deaths of innocent soldiers. So you feel guilty. Not only do you feel guilty for your dead subordinates, but you also feel guilty for Sun Lang. My parents also participated in the Battle of the Great Desolate Mountain and also died at the hands of Sun Lang." Bai Yue shook his head sadly and murmured, "No, it's not like that." Xie Wei didn't hear his muttering. She pressed her hands on Bai Yue's shoulders and said solemnly, "That's why it's necessary to stop him. All of this is the Emperor's fault. Sun Lang is also a victim. He was swallowed by the hatred of the past and fell into the abyss. If you feel guilty towards him, you should stop him. This is what you, hero of Tianyuan, Bai Yue, should do. Bravely admit your past mistakes, face him, and use all your courage to change," Bai Yue chuckled. "Hero of Tianyuan? No, I'm not. I'm not worthy." Xie Wei couldn't hold it in anymore. She shouted, "Don't say that. Just because of one mistake, you're going to deny all your achievements and merits? Is your life going to be decided by the last stain? You've fought for this world for decades. You're also the heroes of this world. Even if you've done something wrong, you have to do your best to make up for it. Even in the Battle of Dahuang Mountain, everyone did their best to defeat the Sky Demon. What happened after that was only because of the Emperor's scheming." Bai Yue raised his head and looked at her blankly. Suddenly, an extremely strange smile appeared on his face. He opened his mouth as if he was mocking himself. Or rather, he was mocking the world. "It's fake. The Battle of Dahuang Mountain is fake." Xie Wei didn't understand at first. She was stunned. "What?" Bai Yue closed his eyes and lay back on the ground as if he was avoiding the entire world. He slowly said, "The Battle of Dahuang Mountain is a lie of the Imperial Court. It's the biggest scam in the world. It deceived everyone, and the truth was buried layer by layer," Xie Wei shouted. But after all, we still defeated the Sky Demon." Although Bai Yue closed his eyes and said miserably, "At that time, we didn't know that the Sky Demon would come." The little minx's expression froze. "What?" Bai Yue's body trembled slightly. He seemed to be in great pain. He curled up but continued to speak. This secret had tortured him for 2 years. He had already endured it to the extreme. He closed his eyes tightly and muttered to himself as if he was sleep-talking and repenting. 300,000 elites, an extremely secret arrangement. His direct elites were transferred away, and the target was only him. The soul of the sacred sword would devour him. He would become the Empire's most eternal guardian. For this, His Majesty had long been prepared. But the plan went wrong. Someone risked their life to protect him and bought him time. So, he devoured everything in the sacred sword of the origin. He became stronger than ever before. He woke up. He began to kill people. It was a chaotic confession, but Xie Wei heard it clearly. This was a terrible and despairing secret. He killed many people. We couldn't stop him at all. The worst thing was, in the middle of killing, the Sky Demon came. We didn't know that the Sky Demon would come. Really, we didn't know at all, but why didn't the Sky Demon come? This is the Empire's biggest scandal. Almost all the sacred swords and the most elite sacred swordsmen were gathered here. There were also 300,000 soldiers. Why didn't the Sky Demon come? The Sky Demon should have come. He hugged his body tightly, as if he wanted to give a little warmth to his thin and cold soul. So, we were faced with a double attack from him and the Sky Demon. Our morale was constantly decreasing, and many places began to collapse. We were surrounded, completely surrounded. We couldn't send out any news, and we couldn't wait for reinforcements. The arrangements we made in order to plot against him became our rope of death. I begged him with all my might. All the generals and soldiers were begging him before he killed them. Help us at least stop killing. The Sky Demon was about to win. The Sky Demon was also negotiating with him. They wanted him to join them, but soon everyone realized that he seemed to have gone mad. He killed everything he saw indiscriminately. Whoever he saw, he killed. Bai Yue let out a bleak laugh that sounded like a curse. How long did he kill? I forgot. The more humans die, the more Sky Demon will appear. So he began to kill the Sky Demon. He killed all the way until he reached the human formation. He began to kill whoever he saw. He killed for a very long time. The entire great desolate mountain, a place that would take a day to ride a horse, was trampled by him. It was as if the sky was raining, and there were ruins and corpses everywhere. He was in a frenzy. The Sky Demon was also in a frenzy. All the Sky Demons charged at him, and the pressure on the humans lessened. Then he laughed, but there were only tears in his laughter. Then, F***, we won. We won. We won. We didn't know how he did it. We didn't know what he did. We didn't know who he killed. We didn't know what he broke. Not only the remaining Sky Demon, but all the Sky Demons in the world were dying. We King won. We won. We actually defeated the extraterrestrial Sky Demon, won the Tianyuan War. In the end, we were only left with a few thousand wounded soldiers and defeated generals. These few thousand people somehow became great contributors. No, they should have become contributors, and then Bai Yue could not continue. He clutched his head tightly, as if he was being tortured by the most desperate nightmare. Xie Wei was already stunned. She looked at the despairing Bai Yue and reached out her hand to touch his head. Then she saw through the mind-reading ability. The blood-red sky, the blood and corpses everywhere, the broken land, and the battlefield of despair. The surviving humans were all lying on the ground. Their expressions were numb. There was no glory or excitement from winning the final battle. Only one person was still standing on the battlefield. He staggered through the mountain of corpses and the sea of blood, searching for something. He was like a walking corpse. He came to a survivor. The survivor's lips trembled. He looked at him and did not speak. Only tears rolled down his face. The person standing casually picked up a broken spear and stabbed it down without hesitation, piercing through the survivor's chest. He was still counting. He was counting. 160,000. 1,379. Then he looked at the battlefield with wooden eyes, looking for the next number. All of this was in Bai Yue's memory. At that time, Bai Yue was also watching all of this. Xie Wei read his memory and saw all of this from Bai Yue's point of view. She could see Bai Yue kneeling in the blood, kowtowing hard, but he could not say anything. He could only let out bursts of dry howls. No wonder Bai Yue, a famous general of Tianyuan, the gold radiant sword saint, with a steel-like will, was forced to go crazy. No wonder Sun Lang could not let go and never forgot. Xie Wei saw Sun Lang's face. Just like what Bai Yue said before. His face was expressionless. His eyes were as if he was dead. That was hell. Chapter 681. Blood, Desperation, madness, and regret. The pictures that had tortured Bai Yue for 2 years flooded into Xie Wei's mind. The little fairy seemed to have been slashed by a sword. She suddenly screamed in horror and hurriedly let go of her hand and stepped back, cutting off the mind-reading connection. Then, she fell to the ground powerlessly. Her face turned pale, and her body couldn't stop trembling. She felt that she had guessed the truth, but she didn't know that the real truth was 100 times crueler than she had imagined. According to Sister Lu, Sun Lang used to be an upright man who was deeply loved and supported by the soldiers. He was a legendary figure who was regarded as a reincarnated sage. But now, he was no longer warm and sincere. He had become cold and suspicious, looking at everything in the world with suspicious eyes and calculating every possibility of betrayal. In people's praise and the classics of the imperial court, Bai Yue was the greatest soldier in the world who had closed the curtain of the War of Heaven's origin with his own hands. But now, he was crazy, escaping from reality, denying everything about himself, and living in pain and guilt. This was the strangest thing. They were the most outstanding soldiers in the world. They had steel-like willpower and indomitable fighting spirit. What kind of blow could make them become like this? Xie Wei now knew that she had gotten all the truth from Bai Yue, but she would rather not know. She would rather have never left the mountain. She would rather have thrown her brother's blood feud to the back of her mind. She would even rather not know the truth and reason behind her parents' deaths, because there were some things that were too cruel for this little girl who had grown up carefree and did not know what sorrow and sorrow were. Such a cruel fact could make Sun Lang's temperament change and completely die, and could make Bai Yue go crazy and regret for the rest of his life. The two greatest heroes of the Heaven's origin sector had degenerated into the souls of the war. After 2 years, they were still deeply tortured by the nightmare in the great desolate mountain, without redemption or relief. Their enemy was a despicable scheme and a cruel fate, which was enough to make a hero past his prime and a general's hair turn white. The little fairy fell to the ground. Great sadness shrouded her heart and held her heart tightly. At this point, all the doubts had been answered. She suddenly understood why Sun Lang said that he would kill Bai Yue without any room for negotiation. At first, she thought it was because of unforgettable hatred, but now it seemed that it might be pity. Sun Lang had once said that he wanted to free Bai Yue. Perhaps it was because of their old relationship that he still felt pity for Bai Yue in his heart. Perhaps he could empathize with Bai Yue and felt that 2 years of torture was enough. So he wanted to free Bai Yue. But who was there that could set him free? Xie Wei recalled the appearance of Sun Lang in her memory. In hell, he walked numbly on the battlefield. After completing the most glorious feat in the world, he did not feel the joy of victory or survival, nor did he feel the anger of betrayal. He had nothing. The will to kill to the end ran through every corner of his body, driving him to finish what he had yet to finish. Therefore, after killing the Sky Demon and winning the War of the Heaven's origin sector, he searched for the remaining thousands of human survivors on the huge battlefield. No matter if they cried or were numb, regretted or begged, he did not hesitate to end their lives. He kept counting the numbers. Other than killing, there was nothing else he could do. Other than killing all the remaining people, he did not know what else he could do. His dead eyes were deeply imprinted in Xie Wei's mind. She felt that she would never forget this memory from Bai Yue's heart. Xie Wei even felt that perhaps after mechanically killing all the surviving human soldiers, Sun Lang would quietly leave the great desolate mountain and expand his killing range to the whole world. Until everyone was dead, there was no pity in his eyes, no emotion on his face, and every movement of his was clean and neat, full of the beauty of killing. The former hero of the Heaven's origin sector had completely become the embodiment of heartless killing. Xie Wei had no doubt that Sun Lang would expand his killing range infinitely and turn the whole world into his hunting ground. So what happened after that? Why did Bai Yue survive, and why did Sun Lang stop? At the very least, he could smile and talk now. Sometimes, he would even show subtle kindness and justice. His soul was neither gloomy nor cold. Instead, it would often emit a warm feeling. It was completely different from how he was in her memories. But it was only until today. Today's Sunlang was displaying a completely different appearance from the one he had seen before. He said that this was the real him. He was not wrong. He was cold and merciless, playing with thousands of lives in his hands. He distorted good and evil, took advantage of the dark human nature, and tried to take advantage of the situation to lead the righteous martial artists at the foot of the mountain to become devils who burned, killed, and looted. He wanted the whole Bai castle to be buried with Bai Junming's stupid choice. He was merciless, just like a demon king. This was wrong. Xia Wei's reason told her that she was a kind monster. She had been carefree since she was young, and she believed that every life deserved to be treated kindly. Every injustice had its perpetrator, and every debt had its debtor. The innocent should not pay for other people's mistakes. However, she had seen the scenes in Bai Yue's memories, the sorrowful doom of the two heroes of the Heaven's Origin sector, the madness and desperation that troubled Bai Yue for 2 years, and the gory battlefield that changed Sun Lang's temperament greatly. Everything made Xia Wei's simple and hilarious view of good and evil shake. She even began to doubt whether or not the world was meaningful at all. She sat on the ground and suddenly let out a series of sad laughter. Yes, at this moment, she almost had no time to care about the sadness of Sun Lang and Bai Yue, because she knew the truth. She knew everything, and the truth denied everything. Her parents had participated in the battle of the Great Bear Mountain. They were the most glorious parents in her heart. Although they did not grow up with her, they shined in her heart. They were her role models, and she was proud of them. She believed that her parents and relatives went to the battlefield for the welfare of the world and fought side by side with the humans. Although they died on the battlefield, their glory was still there. But today, everything was denied. Xia Wei covered her face and giggled. Her mind was shaking violently, and her laughter became more and more sorrowful. She already knew the truth. The so-called Battle of the Great Barren Mountain was a complete hoax. There was no grand epic of the end, no desperate and courageous counterattack. Everything was fake. It was a big lie made up by the human imperial court. The original purpose of this battle was not to destroy the Sky Demon. In the imperial court's carefully prepared plan, there was no place for the Sky Demon. Including her parents, 300,000 Heaven's Origin sector elites, countless elite warriors and peerless masters of the Hooded Continent were gathered to suppress one person to complete a ceremony. Then, everything was screwed up. 300,000 elites could not stop the violent Sun Lang. Halfway through the bloodthirsty battle, the extraterrestrial Sky Demon, who had somehow received the news, quietly came and set up an overwhelming net. Humans were facing the double attack of the Avengers and the extraterrestrial Sky Demon. Sun Lang regarded everything in this world as his enemy. The most ironic thing was that Sun Lang, in such a desperate situation, completed the great cause that the entire human race could not complete after decades of bloody battles. No one knew why or what he did. There were still countless doubts about the battle of the Great Bear Mountain. The only thing that could be confirmed was that he directly led to the defeat of the extraterrestrial Sky Demon. A hero of the Heaven's Origin sector who led an army and fought for the future of the human race was framed by the country he was loyal to at the most impossible time. The man who was betrayed in the endless, desperate slaughter, in the bloody battles against both human beings and the Sky Demon, completely destroyed everything about the extraterrestrial Sky Demon and led to the victory of the war of the Heaven's Origin sector. Carrying out the Emperor's secret order, he carried out a despicable betrayal and shameful attack on a general of the Imperium who had made great military achievements. After it was exposed, he was besieged by the Sky Demon. In the desperation of the imminent defeat, the general who betrayed and plotted against defeated the Sky Demon single-handedly and ended the war of the Heaven's Origin that had lasted for decades. How ironic it was. What was even more ironic was that the records and traces of the hero who was betrayed and saved the entire human race in desperation were erased by the Imperium. The despicable truth of the Great Barren Mountain was hidden in layers of fog and lies, and the shameful traitors who survived received the honor of ending the War of the Heavens origin sector. Therefore, Bai Yue had gone crazy. The praises of the world and the rewards of the imperial court were no different from stabbing into his heart. The names of the 300,000 people who had died in the great desolate mountain were engraved in his heart, engraved in his soul. He alone shouldered all the truth and sin, living day after day in endless wailing and pain. This kind of torture was enough to drive any general with a heart of stone and an indomitable spirit to madness. For Bai Yue, it was a nightmare that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He hoped to be free from the pain, but he could not be free. For Xia Wei, her desperation had quietly arrived. Her parents had died in battle in the great desolate mountains, but they weren't heroes. Everything she believed in, everything she persevered for, collapsed at this moment. What right did she have to seek revenge from Sun Lang? What right did she have to persuade him to turn back, to persuade him to let go, and to persuade him not to be swallowed by hatred? The little fairy laughed and cried. She grasped her clothes tightly and breathed hard. She smiled miserably. What is this? What is this? Did my parents die because of this? Weren't they heroes? Why did they die in such a place? Why did they die for such an inexplicable reason? For humanity? For the emperor? Why did they do this? Unfortunately, she would never know the answer to this. There were too many truths that were already buried in the heavy death of the Great Barren Mountain, covered by layers of fog. Jidu was also frightened. The sword spirit and Lu Shujin were two souls in one body and shared memories. She even knew about Sun Lang's astonishing background, but she had never thought that the truth of the Great Barren Mountain would be so cruel and laughable. The body of the demon sword was also constantly trembling. The sword spirit's soul was fiercely changing. She thought about everything that had happened after she met Sun Lang in Lu Town. Sun Lang's words, Sun Lang's performance, their idle chats, and even her occasional interactions with Zhao Yunlong. Even Zhao Yunlong did not know the true story behind the battle of the Great Barren Mountain. That woman who was loyal and devoted to Sun Lang only thought that after Sun Lang led the army to defeat the Sky Demon, he was suddenly attacked by Bai Yue and the others. In other words, Sun Lang firmly guarded this secret. He did not tell anyone, did not mention it to anyone. He only silently guarded the most despairing hell 2 years ago. She muttered, This idiot. Even though she had lost her body, the sword spirit suddenly had the urge to cry. That is to say, after our marshal used some unknown method to defeat the Sky Demon, he turned back, found all the human survivors on the battlefield, and killed them all? On another mountain, a few miles away from the Bai Castle, 2 people were standing on a hidden lookout tower. They were looking in the direction of the Bai Castle. One of them asked in a surprised tone. He shook his head and sighed. What a pity. He had done such an earth-shattering thing, and the survivors must have lost their spirit. He could have used the momentum of his victory and his terrifying battle record to gather these people. With his military skills, it would not have been difficult for him to lead them back to the capital in triumph and settle the score with his majesty. If he had really done that, I'm afraid that the situation in the empire today would be very different. The other person looked at him coldly and said indifferently, What do you know? With his personality, after encountering such a thing, how could he care about these things? Besides, the eyes of the man who spoke just now lit up. He asked besides. The person who answered him was the Heavenly Strategy's crown princess, whom he had not seen for a long time. The crown princess was wearing a luxurious cloak. Her phoenix eyes were like lightning. She glanced at him and said indifferently, If you want to know so much, you can ask him directly. The man heard this and shrank his head. He was speechless. After hearing about this master's glorious battle record, even if I had 8 times the courage, I would not dare to provoke him. Empress snorted again. She looked in the direction of the Bai Castle and saw that the crowd was like a swarm of ants. It was the martial artists at the foot of the mountain who were attacking the Bai castle. Chaos had begun, and the Bai castle was inevitable. This also meant that it was time for their real plan to begin. She suddenly felt a sense of irritation. She turned around and said, "I'm going back to the capital." The man was stunned. He asked, "The show is about to begin. Your Highness, are you not going to continue watching?" Empress said coldly, "Entertainers are not my cup of tea. Besides, I already knew the result." That person smiled in understanding and bowed respectfully. "Then this subject will respectfully send your Highness back to the capital." Now, this Marshal Jia, oh, it's Marshal Sunday, Marshal Sun's rise, is unstoppable. Now that your Highness has returned to the capital, His Majesty will definitely put you in an important position. This subject will congratulate your Highness first. Leave the matters here to me. Your Highness, please be on your way. Marshal Sun's nose is quite sharp. Empress looked at him meaningfully and said, "Then I'll leave everything to you, Mr. Zhang. I'll take my leave." Looking at Empress's departing figure, Mr. Zhang's lips curled into a smile. Everything was as expected. Hatred made people lose their minds. Fear made people lose their courage. And stubbornness made people lose themselves. This country was going to go crazy soon. "Sun Lang, you're the only one left," he whispered. "The show is about to begin. Are you ready, Rushu?" Chapter 682. The situation was a complete mess. At this point, the so-called stratagems and strategies were no longer effective. Just like in a war, once the battle began, the hope of victory lay in the organization of the grassroots officers and the tenacity and morale of the soldiers. Strategizing was usually done before the battle. The Bai family fort was a mess. Bai Jinming's risky move had exposed the weakest link of the plan. In order to keep it a secret, he could not tell most people about his plan. He could only arrange the tasks and plans beforehand. When the time was right, they would take action. There was no need for orders or commands. All the participants in the plan were just gears in a huge machine. They only needed to do their jobs well. This plan could not be considered clumsy because his prestige and the ability of his subordinates to carry out the plan smoothly. Furthermore, he had done his best to keep it a secret, if there were no accidents. However, accidents did happen. His cunning and terrifying opponent had already noticed the weakest link of the plan. High secrecy meant that there was a low margin for error. Once the plan went wrong, the situation would quickly turn into a mess. When Sun Lang sent out a few surprise troops to destroy the most crucial parts of the plan, Bai Jinming's entire plan could not be stopped from sliding into the abyss. However, a commander would usually keep a few reserve and fresh troops under his command to make up for the lack of command during a stalemate. This was called insurance. Bai Jinming was the same. However, the most important thing was that he had entrusted the important responsibility of the reserve to Tensei Province. Silly boy, how could he have trusted the Tensei Province? Sun Lang shook his head and strolled around the Bai family fort. His ears were filled with panicked shouts and angry roars. The battle cries outside were getting closer and closer. Right now, the group of Wulian people at the foot of the mountain had been provoked to attack the mountain. The Bai family fort was about to be overturned, but the Heavenly Policy Mansion had not made any move for a long time. Other than Bai Yue, who had inexplicably recovered a lot of his memories and rushed out to fight, the original plan did not have the slightest mistake or change. In other words, the Tensei Province had not made any moves. Did he run away? Or was he waiting? Or did he have another purpose? Sun Lang walked at a leisurely pace with a frown on his face. Whether the Bai family fort was destroyed or how badly the Bai family clansmen died, it didn't matter to him. Killing no longer brought him joy. There were only two things he was concerned about. The first was the whereabouts of the Golden Holy Sword, which was the purpose of his trip. The second was the movements of the Tensei Province. Since they dared to interfere, they should be prepared to be cut down. Other than that, it was to kill Bai Yue. He should have died 2 years ago, but at that time, the expression in his eyes changed, and he couldn't help but sigh. Then, he shifted his attention. He heard the battle cries coming closer and closer from the foot of the mountain. Once those so-called heroes who had seen blood rush through the gate of the Bai family fort, they would be completely blinded by blood, wealth, and lust. Humans were also animals. Due to the morality and immorality established by civilization and order, it was difficult for them to resist the temptation of instinct. Humans were also animals. Their blood was born with the violent genes of destruction and plunder. Without a doubt, they were the most dangerous creatures on the planet. As for whether they became slaves to their desires, or whether they were blinded by the coming revelry and turned into bloodthirsty beasts, there was nothing that could be done about it. Just like what Sun Lang had said before, they chose their own paths. They could have chosen not to come. They could have chosen not to come. Even if they came, they could have chosen not to kill or plunder. As for those who saw the magnificent houses and buildings and wanted to set fire to them, those who saw the priceless treasures and wanted to rob them, and those who saw the powerless by family, they wanted to torture and kill them. That was their own business. However, when they saw their companions or strangers burning down the buildings and looting the treasures that they would not have to worry about for the rest of their lives, they would feel envious. Therefore, they would want to do the same. Therefore, they would become beasts and slaves to their desires. This was also their own business. They would spend the money they looted and bear the hidden risks and the torture of their conscience. This was how the world worked. You could do anything as long as you knew what you were doing, as long as you could pay the price. Hurried footsteps came from the corner in front of them. Several young men in armor and holding weapons hurried over. Their faces were white and tender, and their faces were mixed with confusion, fear, and excitement. These people seemed to be rookies who had never been to the battlefield and had never seriously killed people. Only rookies who were facing a fight for the first time would show such an expression. When they saw Sun Lang, they were first surprised. They found that the other party was not armed, alone, and not wearing any armor. This gave him courage. The leader pointed his sword at Sun Lang and shouted, "Who are you? Tell me your name." When he said this, the young man's face instinctively showed an overbearing expression. Sun Lang smiled. It seemed that these were the pampered young masters of the Bai family. As for whether they came here with weapons in hand, it didn't matter whether it was because of the responsibility of dying together with their family or because they didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. When these people saw that Sun Lang didn't answer, they became vigilant and angry. But before they could do anything, they felt their bodies become light. The light armor that could block arrows didn't provide the necessary defense. Sun Lang only glanced at them, and 4 heads flew into the air. The headless corpses spurted out blood from their necks. They flailed their arms and legs a few times before they lost their balance and fell to the ground. He withdrew his gaze and looked at the clear and cloudless sky. Such bright and beautiful weather was really a good time to kill and set fire. Sun Lang took one last look at the 4 headless corpses and the 4 faces that fell not too far away. There was not the slightest ripple in his heart. He suddenly thought of Yin Yuan village. It was there that he had faced young Master Wu Hen, who had killed Ping Yidao. He had used the strange doctor's iron staff as a sword and chopped young Master Wu Hen into pieces. That was the first time he had killed someone 2 years after the battle of the Great Desolate Mountain. His mood at that time was somewhat different from now. At that time, he had witnessed Ping Yidao's life and his final choice. It was also the first time he had killed someone for someone else since the battle of the Great Desolate Mountain. Sun Lang still remembered his mood at that time. It was agitated yet calm yet sorrowful. That sword had been unrestrained and unrestrained. That sword had not been entangled with anything. He had thought that everything was different, but now it seemed that it was just an illusion. Killing was killing. There was no need for any motive or judgment. There was no justice or injustice. Good and evil were meaningless. He could no longer perceive such things. To him, killing people was a very normal thing. It was as normal as eating and drinking. He didn't even feel numb to it. Sun Lang was silent for a moment. Suddenly, he smiled. It was no big deal. This was the price. Yes, the price. He walked toward the gate of the Bai clan fort. Since the Tensei province had not made a move and Bai Yue showed no signs of returning to normal, he would add fuel to the fire. In the hall where the heroes were gathered, Bai Junming lay on the ground like a dead dog. His eyes were lifeless, and he was full of despair. He was almost no different from a dead man. The only reason he was still breathing was that someone would not allow him to die. The hall was quiet. Although there were more than a dozen people still alive, no one spoke or acted rashly. Even though they were all famous martial arts heroes who had shocked Jianghu for a long time, they had no choice but to lower their proud heads at this moment. They were all in the Bai clan fort. They were all watching the sword sage's family that dominated Sichuan and was famous in Qinzhou being destroyed in a raging fire. They were going to be the spectators and engrave the scene of the Bai clan's destruction in their minds. They were a group of monkeys, and the Bai clan that was about to be destroyed was the pitiful chicken. Wei Zhongxian narrowed his eyes. With a kind expression, he shoved his hands into his sleeves and brought out a stack of papers. He then respectfully distributed them to the martial artists who were still alive. Come, Master Jing, Reverend Bai Dai, Elder Ji, Sect Leader Wang, please take these. Take a look at them and sign them. After this battle, you could be considered to have gotten to know each other. Although his actions were very respectful and his expression was very humble, just like a lowly old servant, no one dared to put on airs in front of him. The more Wei Zhongxian smiled like a grandson, the more the things he handed over would be like a grandfather. As expected, after a few glances, even the shrewd heroes could not help but gasp. Master Jing chanted the name of Buddha. As a monk, he had faith and was fearless. As a result, he directly said, "Benefactor Wei, I wonder what your master wants to do?" When Wei Zhongxian heard this, he straightened his body and said seriously, "There are rules for everything under the heavens. A large country has its rules, and a small family has its rules. My master wants to set up his own rules." Master Jing's expression was calm. Amitba, the war has only been over for 2 years, and all living things have just gained peace. Your master wants to stir up chaos. This old monk does not dare to obey. Wei Zhongxian said indifferently. Perhaps master will change his mind in a few hours. Master Jing smiled indifferently. Benefactor's words are wrong. I know Benefactor's son's martial arts are powerful and unrivaled in the world. Perhaps with one sword, he can make rivers of blood flow in Sanskrit temple and cut off its orthodoxy. But so what? 1,000 years ago, there was no Sanskrit temple in the world. What difference does it make if there is no Sanskrit temple now? Although we Buddhist disciples are foolish and foolish, we still have the determination to imitate our predecessors and sacrifice ourselves to protect the Tao. Wei Zhongxian first furrowed his brows, and then they relaxed. He smiled. This one will not debate with master. My master said that you will change your mind in a few hours, so he naturally has his reasons. Master Jing said calmly, Benefactor's son's plans are great. Forgive this old monk for speaking bluntly, but I fear that the road ahead will be bumpy. Since Benefactor Wei is so loyal and devoted, why don't you advise him? Wei Zhongxian was stunned when he heard this. He revealed an expression of reminiscence, as if he had thought of the past. Then he smiled. He was not as kind and amiable as before, but he was much more sincere. This one is a cripple, but because of fate and opportunity, I can be considered to have seen countless people. In this life, I have seen all types of people. There are some who look down on this one because they think they are virtuous and virtuous. There are some who flatter this one because they need my help. There are some who pretend to be close to this one because they have other motives. Even though they call this one brother, showing concern for my well-being, they still cannot hide the disdain in the depths of their eyes. Even those who fear this one, those who flatter this one, are all like this. Wei Zhongxian looked at Master Jing and said, Master is the only one who is different from them. When he first saw this one, there was curiosity in his eyes, but there was no disdain. He truly sees this one, sees me as a person. He would even joke with me about that kind of thing. If others dared to mention it to me, I would definitely kill them. However, when Master brings it up, I do not get angry at all. Do you know why? This question clearly did not need an answer. Wei Zhongxian indifferently said, "This one has lived for so many years. I have long lived enough. No matter what master wants to do, no matter what plan you have, this one will accompany you to the end, because this one wants to be a person." Master Jing wanted to say more, but Wei Zhongxian had already turned around and walked towards the others. He said with a smile, "Master Jing is a monk. The four elements are nothing. He does not even care about the survival of his sect, the life and death of his disciples, or even the reputation of his Buddhist sect. Do you all have that kind of realm?" Master Jing bitterly laughed. He raised his head to look at Master Baidai, who was leaning against the wall. He did not know what kind of great luck this master of Jingyang Palace had encountered to actually make that Sun Lang think highly of him. Not only was he not injured, he did not even have a share in that death sentence talisman. He did not know what kind of backing Jingyang Palace had to be able to make that cold-blooded and cruel demon give him a way out. Master Baidai met Master Jing's gaze. He understood the gaze of that Sanskrit temple bastard and also bitterly laughed. How the F***ck would I know? It can't be that evil junior brother is waiting at his door to praise him, right? In the show Sword Garden, Bai Yue and Xia Wei sat facing each other in silence. One of them was laughing and crying, while the other was crying and laughing. Both of them were walking on the edge of being mentally retarded. Her B***TCH personality was completely worried. Moreover, she had also heard the shocking truth about the Great Desolate Mountain. She was originally agitated, but she also had to counsel the despairing Xia Wei. Her mind also felt waves of fatigue. However, looking at the despairing expression of the usually naive little fairy, she was indeed very worried. She really did not want to see that bright and beautiful smile disappear forever. She earnestly said, "That's Xia Wei. You don't have to be too sad. Since things are like that, your parents might not have been killed by Sun Lang, right? At that time, the situation was so chaotic. Your parents might have died in the hands of the Sky Demon. At the very least, they died in a heroic battle." Hearing this, the little fairy slowly blinked her eyes. Her lifeless expression had a little more vitality, as if she had grasped the last life-saving straw. Is it? The sword spirit sighed in her heart. Obviously, it shouldn't be. Otherwise, why would Xia Wei's elder brother, the horned tiger called Xie Ji, be killed by Sun Lang in a rage? She was afraid that she had touched Sun Lang's reverse scale. However, at this time, Xia Wei was no longer thinking about this. Or rather, she instinctively ignored this possibility. Her eyes slowly became agitated. She grabbed the demon's sword and said, "Is it really like this, Sister Lu? My parents, if they weren't killed by Sun Lang, The sword spirit smiled bitterly. She was just about to comfort Xia Wei when the sword suddenly shook. As the sword spirit's soul began to tremble violently, she suddenly felt a great sense of uneasiness. This is, she said sternly, "Be careful." At the same time, Bai Yue, who was lying on the ground and muttering to himself, suddenly arched his body and then let out a painful roar. Chapter 683. At the main gate of the Bai Clan Fort. The Bai Clan Fort was situated on top of a mountain. It was magnificent and sprawling. It was almost a small city. The main gate of the Bai Clan Fort was built to look like a city gate. It was originally a place that was easy to defend, but hard to attack. However, Sun Lang had chosen to bury the explosives here. An earth-shattering explosion rang out. Even the sturdy bricks and ingenious casting techniques could not withstand the terrifying power of the explosives that could shatter mountains. Only God knew how many explosives Sun Lang had buried here. After all, with his martial arts and some special skills, it was easy for him to dig up the soil and bury the explosives without anyone noticing. Therefore, the sturdy city gate was reduced to ruins, and the defense that was as solid as a rock became the biggest flaw. Even the elites that Bai Zhenming had hidden on the left and right sides of the city were all dead, and the powerful control weapons were all buried under the rubble. When Sun Lang arrived near the city gate, The people who had rushed over from behind were angrily building defensive fortifications and preparing to defend. The Bai clan fort was, after all, a clan of sword saints and a clan of generals. They had a very comprehensive system for nurturing military talents. The garrison guards who stayed in the fort were all knowledgeable about military affairs. When they saw the gate collapsing, they quickly found a few carriages and blocked the gap. The rest of the carriages formed a semicircle around the gap. They then ordered the other soldiers to deploy the war supplies that they had sent from the nearby armory. After all, they were the elite soldiers who had been trained according to the strictest military regulations. Other than the fact that they did not have the designation of the imperial court, they were no different from the regular army. What a pity! Sun Lang turned around the corner and was immediately discovered by someone. The Bai family member who was in charge of commanding the scene was clearly more decisive than the young masters from before. Seeing that Sun Lang didn't answer after he shouted, he snatched the enemy-suppressing crossbow from his subordinate's hand and shot an arrow at Sun Lang's chest. Sun Lang casually brushed away the arrow. Suddenly, he remembered something. He took out the fire chelan that had not been used for a long time and a handful of bullets from his pocket with his left hand. "I wanted to try this for a long time," he said. Then they opened fire. Intense gunshots rang out one after another. Ejecting the magazine, reloading, and firing, the movements were fluid and fast to the extreme. The red Kylan unleashed its firepower at a speed that was difficult to discern with the naked eye, almost like an assault rifle firing continuously. That being said, the firing time only lasted for one breath. About 2 seconds. Sun Lang opened the piping hot magazine and poured out the empty shell. The cute metal shell fell to the ground with a tinkling sound. It was a yellowish-orange color. There were 19 in total. 19 shots were fired in 2 seconds, and 19 people died. Regardless of whether they were near or far, the Bai clan members who had surrounded the city gate to prepare for battle fell to the ground. All of them had been shot in between the eyebrows. It could be seen that the shooter's control of the gun was unparalleled in the world. Sun Lang blew away the smoke from the muzzle and laughed proudly. But soon, he curled his lips in boredom. Motherf asterisk her. I'm really bored to death. But he had to find some fun, because today was the closest he had ever been to that memory from 2 years ago. He wanted to get even closer because he wanted to send Bai Yue off. So, he was very irritated. The red Kylan nimbly turned in a circle in Sun Lang's hand. He looked at both sides. The problem of the city gate had been solved, but the Bai clan had been in business for more than 10 generations. Who knew how many secret castles and defensive measures had been built by the masters of the Bai clan? It would not be easy for the motley crew at the foot of the mountain to kill people inside. So, he had to let Sun Lang do some small work. Sun Lang was thinking about where to start, but the next moment, his expression suddenly changed, and he looked back in the direction of the Shovel Sword Garden. In the Shovel Sword Garden, the little fairy had just been comforted by the sword spirit. It was as if she had grasped at a life-saving straw. Her mood was extremely agitated, but the next moment, the sword spirit was greatly alarmed. She and Xia Wei were connected and shared their demonic power, so this warning also affected the little monster. Even though Xia Wei was in a state of grief and excitement, when he heard the warning of the sword spirit, his demonic power still circulated and he subconsciously dodged to the side. Then, she heard Bai Yue's miserable howl. The gold radiance sword saint lay on the rubble, clutching his head with both hands and bending his body. Then, he let out a terrifying howl, containing endless pain and despair. It was as if a terrifying monster was about to break out of his body. He struggled, resisted, and tried to stop it. However, his screams of fear had already indicated the end. Xia Wei looked at Bai Yue, his heart bewildered. He did not know what had happened to Bai Yue. Ji Du had long been buzzing, demonic power rolling out, purple light qi protecting Xia Wei's body. The sword spirit was already facing a great enemy. In a mental link, the sword spirit murmured, "Well, what's going on? Why is it in Bai Yue's body? How could this be?" In an instant, she also understood many things. For example, what Sun Lang had said to her before about the opportunity to regain a physical body. What exactly was he talking about? But how could it be Bai Yue? Why did it have to be Bai Yue? How could it be? What's going on? Has the emperor gone mad? At this time, Bai Yue was already rolling on the ground. He looked like he was in great pain, roaring and rolling like a madman, crashing into the ground and cracking it. At the same time, a terrifying power escaped from Bai Yue's body, even resonating with Ji Du's demonic power, and even the entire Bai castle began to shake. Because the Bai castle was built on a mountain, the sun was changing, it was removing, it was strengthening, it was killing, it was war, it was weapons, it was the revitalization of old things. It was the rebirth of a new talent standing on the earth. The Bai castle was shaking. The mountain where the Bai castle was located was shaking, and even the weapons in the Bai castle were shaking. No matter how sad Xiaowei was, she realized that something terrible was about to happen. Whether it was Ji Du's vigilance or her perception as a horned tiger, she felt that something terrible was going to happen. Most importantly, the horned tiger's spiritual sense, which contained spiritual power and could see through the falsehood and lies of the world, told her that Bai Yue in front of her was undergoing some kind of terrible transformation. She shouted in shock, What's going on? Grandpa Bai? How can he have two souls? The sword spirit did not seem to hear Xiao Wei's words. She murmured, What does the emperor want to do? What do they want to do? How can this be? The little fairy shouted, Sister Lu. The B*TCH was suddenly awakened. She was stunned and said, What's wrong? Xiao Wei did not care about being angry. She shouted, What should we do now? The sword spirit did not even think about it. Of course. Hearing this, the little fairy shouted, Then what about Grandpa Bai? At the same time, Bai Yue let out another violent roar. His red eyes looked at Xiao Wei, and a sharp white light suddenly shot out from his eyes. With a fierce momentum that could destroy everything, it shot toward the little fairy. Ji Du's demonic power was brilliant, and the sharp light collided with the sharp golden aura. A huge force blasted over, and the little fairy flew out involuntarily. The sword spirit shouted in the air, What the F***CK are you fighting for? Leave it to Sun Lang to clean it up. Do you still want to do anything? After that, the B*TCH was afraid that Xiao Wei would take things too hard and simply stayed away for death. Without waiting for Xiao Wei's answer, she concentrated her demonic power and in turn interfered with Xiao Wei's body. She forced the little fairy to run outside. Behind them, Bai Yue's painful roar slowly turned into fury and excitement. The mountain range trembled, as if even the mountains were responding to it. The fierce golden power surged out and resonated with the mountain rocks and weapons. It swept across the entire Bai castle, shocking everyone's soul. Inside the Bai family fort, the people who had been frightened by the explosion and the rumors were shocked by the sudden appearance of the Bai family fort. Many of the more knowledgeable people burst into tears and shouted to the sky, The Grand Ancestor has made his move. Our Bai family has nothing to worry about. A bunch of clowns dare to challenge the Gold Radiant Sword Saint? Our Bai family is the Sword Saint's family, the #1 family in Qin province. We are deeply favored by the Sword Saint. How can we be shaken by mere Jianghu bandits? In the meeting hall, the dog-like Bai Jinming suddenly opened his eyes wide. Like a fish on land, he struggled and jumped up. His eyes were shining with a blazing flame. He shouted, My father is awake. My father has recovered his memory. My father is coming. Just you wait. Do you know who my father is? My father is Bai Yue. Bai Yue, Gold Radiance Sword Saint. He will kill you all one by one. Kill all of you. The rest of the people turned pale. However, Sun Lang's performance was too frightening, so they did not dare to act rashly. After all, the outcome of the battle was not clear yet. Wei Zhongxian frowned. He reached out his hand and sealed Bai Jinming's acupuncture point. Quiet down. He sneered. Gold Radiance Sword Saint? What's so great about him? It's not like Master has never fought him before. 2 years ago, he was prepared but failed. What can he do now? Mr. Zhang stood on the observation deck a few miles away from the Bai Castle. The wind blew his robe as he looked in the direction of the Bai Castle. His eyes glowed with a dark blue light as he chanted a mysterious incantation. The incantation seemed to be a language that shouldn't exist in this world. Obviously, he was trying his best to restrain his power and prevent it from leaking out into the outside world. This was because the most terrifying enemy in the world was standing right in front of him in the Bai Clan castle. If possible, he would never want to face such a monster head-on. However, there were some things that he could not do just because he did not want to do them. The speed of his incantation gradually increased, but the incantation remained as clear as ever. Immense amounts of spiritual energy surged within his body like a living creature. His spiritual energy pulsed, and pulsed as it communicated with the other force in the direction of the Bai Clan fort. Gradually, he sensed the other party's message, greeting, conversing, and replying. Wake up, wake up. This is our mission. This is the meaning of our existence. This is our destiny. Today will be the beginning of our journey of vengeance. The last syllable came out of Mr. Zhang's mouth. The ritual was coming to an end. Mr. Zhang's extremely active power finally broke free from his seal and leaked out. In an instant, a peerless sword aura burst out from the direction of the Bai Castle. It was so powerful that it seemed as if it could tear the heavens and the earth apart. He had only leaked out a little bit of his power, and he had already been discovered. No wonder he was chosen by Father to ascend. Unfortunately, Mr. Zhang smiled faintly in the face of the majestic sword aura. Unfortunately, it was already over. Chapter 684. The peerless sharpness that almost tore the world apart slashed toward the mountain where Mr. Zhang was. The mountains and rivers changed color, and the sword chi was everywhere. In the face of this terrifying power that did not seem to belong to the human world, Mr. Zhang was fearless. They came from a more noble race and should not be afraid of primitive human beings. However, a smile of interest appeared at the corner of his mouth. Now, are you still a human being? He could not get the answer to this question now, but one day he would ask the other party this question and get the answer he wanted. It would not be long. Sun Lang, is it? He murmured. We are both exiles from a foreign land. We will meet again soon. Then, Mr. Zhang collapsed. He was like a broken porcelain. His skin, which was no different from a real person, cracked with fine lines. Fine silver light came out of his 7 orifices and the cracks on his body. Then, his fragile body turned into fine dust and drifted between heaven and earth. The mysterious spiritual body completed the transfer in an instant, and the remaining huge spiritual power, which had lost control, merged into the mountain in an instant. Take it, take it. This is my last gift to you. The moment Mr. Zhang disappeared, the sword chi that slashed toward him suddenly scattered over the mountain. It split into thousands of invisible sword chi and fell like a waterfall. Like several arrow arrays shooting at the same time, thousands of powerful invisible arrows covered the whole mountain. For a moment, the hard stones were broken, and the soil was turned over. The whole mountain was plowed by the invisible sword chi, and there was no intact place. Soon, Sun Lang's figure appeared here. He stepped on the broken mountain and looked around with a frown. Gone? Why did he run so fast? He seemed to have found something. He reached out and waved his hand. A piece of broken cloth on the ground quickly rose and shot toward him like a flying stone, falling into his palm. Sun Lang picked up the piece of cloth. It was moon-white in color and looked like the material of an inner garment. He looked around and found the tattered cloth scattered everywhere. Adult male, medium height, slightly thin. There are footprints here. He fell into deep thought. Even if he took off his cumbersome robe to escape, there was no reason to take off all his clothes and run naked. These pieces of cloth even included the material of his undergarments. In other words, his entire set of clothes had been cut into pieces, and his body should have been cut into pieces. How could there not be a single drop of blood left? He closed his eyes and raised his hands. The remnant sword chi that had descended from the sky and shot in all directions resonated with the soil and gravel. Immediately after, the wind and the torn robes that were scattered all over the place were swept up by an invisible force and gathered in a certain direction. The wind gathered into a whirlwind, and the torn robes kept spinning around the eye of the whirlwind, as if there were hundreds of invisible hands controlling them. From inside to outside, from the inner clothes to the inner clothes, and then to the outer robes, 7 or 8 pieces of inner and outer robes were pieced together to form an empty human figure. He looked like he was standing there alone. Sun Lang opened his eyes and walked around the human figure pieced together by the torn robes. With every step he took, the resonance of the remnant sword chi that had descended from the sky and merged with the grass, trees, earth, and stones became stronger. He sensed the state of the sword chi and observed the traces of destruction around him. Then, a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He waved his hand, and a sword light shot up into the sky. Immediately, it turned into hundreds of invisible sword chi and fell from the sky, shrouding the human figure in the robes. Stone chips flew, and the cloth was torn. The torn robes that had been beaten back to their original shape scattered like butterflies. "I see." Sun Lang looked at the restored scene and said indifferently, "They scattered before they were hit by the sword chi. Is this suicide? No, it's too easy. Moreover, humans don't have such a natural and pollution-free method of suicide." His expression changed slightly. He reached out and picked up a piece of cloth. He sensed it carefully, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. This feeling, this is interesting. It's over. Sun Lang seemed to have guessed something. He had a cynical look on his face, but nobody knew who he was mocking. Then, he looked in the direction of the Bai family's fort's jade sword garden. If that's the case, I can guess their plan. But what's their goal? In the direction of the jade sword garden, Bai Yue, who was roaring at the sky and venting his sword chi, was extremely violent like a mad tiger. He looked like a ferocious beast that had gone mad. His body emitted an extremely cruel and violent killing intent. His eyes were red, and he had lost all rationality. Nevertheless, just as he was about to vent his desire to destroy, an enormous mental power flowed through the mountain range under his feet and merged into his body. His body suddenly shook. This unowned soul power was so pure that it merged into Bai Yue's body and strengthened one of his souls. It was like the most elite of soldiers. Thus, the battle between the two souls that had lasted for 2 years finally came to an end. Taking advantage of the fact that Bai Yue's soul was recovering from the pain and suffering, the other soul that had been hiding for a long time broke through all of the Golden Radiance Grand Swordmaster's defenses and advanced triumphantly. The pain in Bai Yue's roars gradually subsided. Instead, they were replaced by elation, madness, and murderous intent after being imprisoned for so long. Suddenly, he roared at the sky. It was as if the entire mountain range in the West River was responding to him. In an instant, an invisible and terrifying energy swept across the entire Bai family's fort. Everyone's weapons were buzzing and vibrating, and they almost flew out of their hands. Frightened by this terrifying energy, the Bai family members who were trying to escape stopped in their tracks. The Jianghu swordsmen who were advancing triumphantly also stopped attacking. They listened to the roar that shook the wilderness, and great uneasiness rose in their hearts. Ji Du, who was running away with the fairy, suddenly stopped and said in a complicated tone, "It succeeded." The little demoness still had a confused look on her face. What succeeded? The sword spirit did not speak. She was afraid that some thoughts, desires, and even malice would crawl into her soul. She was born as a human, but by a freak combination of factors, she was living in a lonely and cold place with no warmth and no feelings. It was like being in a cold prison. She did not know how many days and nights she had been tortured to the point that she almost went crazy. Only when she lost something would she know how precious it was to be a human, and how happy it was to be a human. Right now, a living example had appeared in front of him. It wasn't even a sword spirit that was transformed from a human. It was a sword spirit that was forged from iron and fire and was endowed with spirituality. Even so, it was still able to take over a human's body and possess a human's physique. From then on, it had a completely different fate, life, and a future. She was not sure if she could resist this temptation. No, she was almost certain that if there was such an opportunity in front of her, she would do it at any cost. Xiaowei seemed to feel something. She shivered and was a little uneasy. Sister Lu, before her voice fell, the little fairy felt her hair stand on end. The next moment, a figure flashed, and an overwhelming momentum roared. A person stood not far away from her. His white beard was fluttering, his white hair was messy, and his clothes were shabby. In terms of appearance, he was a very common old man in dire straits. But the people who saw him would never think so. There were a handful of top people in this world who didn't need external items or disguises to set off their identity. Even if their clothes were tattered like a beggar's, it would still be difficult to hide their true nature. The little fairy's eyes widened. The person in front of her, looking at his appearance, was undoubtedly Bai Yue, but not like the Bai Yue she knew. In the past 10 days, although she had spent a lot of time with Bai Yue, the Bai Yue she knew was not the invincible gold-radiant sword saint in books and legends. He was just a pitiful old man who was tormented by the memories and pain of the past. He had lost his memory and was no longer elegant. He was muddle-headed all day, either in a daze, sad, or beaten up by Sun Lang. But now, although Bai Yue was still in his shabby clothes and his messy hair and beard, his temperament was different. Just standing in the same place, an austere aura like a golden spear and armored horse rushed to her face. This was the splendid momentum of a brave warrior on the battlefield. Just by his posture, he could make ordinary people feel discouraged and warriors lose their will. This was the hero of Tian Yuan who shone the world. This was the gold-radiant sword saint who surpassed 3 generations. This was what Bai Yue should be like. But Xiaowei stared blankly at Bai Yue and suddenly cried out, You are not Grandpa Bai." Bai Yue glanced at her. Suddenly, facing this gaze, Xiaowei felt pain on her skin, as if it was constantly being pierced by sharp needles. With a thought, she summoned her demon power and immediately isolated this sharp gaze. Bai Yue did not care. He did not even look at Xiaowei. An ant was not worthy of his attention. What he cared about was something else. He looked at the sword in Xiaowei's hand and said lightly, "You look very strange, but after all, your aptitude is extraordinary. You have the same spiritual body as us. I approve of you. Time is pressing, so I won't say much. Do you want to be like me?" Ji Du's sword suddenly trembled. Then, Bai Yue said, "Whether you are a human or a demon, inferior creatures are not worthy of our submission. We are noble and free. If you want to be like me, then kill your host and break that ridiculous contract. Then come with me. I will take you to see my people. They will choose a better body for you." Xiaowei was shocked and glared at Bai Yue. "What did you do to Grandpa Bai?" Bai Yue looked at her coldly. Noisy, a white light shot out from his eyes. That light was actually a sword ray that contained the power of the gold radiance. It was incomparably sharp and arrived in an instant. Purple light flashed, and the demon's sword slashed up, breaking the gold radiance sword ray. The sword spirit said coldly, "I don't believe you. How can you prove that you will keep your promise? How did you do it?" Bai Yue said impatiently, "That is a very long story. There is not much time left. I still have other things to do. With your help, I have a better chance." Suddenly, a lazy voice rang out. "My son, what are you going to do? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.